Free them
And
all.
we're saying,
Free them all.
Mumia
Live and
Abu
direct. Make
Jamal,
it easy to take it. Take it.
Oscar Grant,
Free them all. The positive energy is everything to us. So again, thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
So justice for Tyree, you guys see it here. We with the Nichols family and all the others that are out here fighting for justice. Okay, hey, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl, Hollywood Next in the building. Bringing you guys yet another one. So, we is about to get into this here ex-parte reading. I will be the facilitator of the readings. And if you're new to the channel, let me just stop by saying welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Okay. If you have not subscribed to this channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, turn that post bell notification on, and select all so you don't miss me when I come back and bring you guys yet another one. Anyways, we started off yesterday by reading the response to the government responded to the motion for, the recusal and dismissal and, everything that Young Thug's attorneys are doing for their client, right? Rightfully so, okay? But there was so much discovery inside of this reading that I had not had knowledge about prior to the reading. Kind of like the Alec Baldwin case, when at the end, the reason that they dismissed his case is because it was newly discovered information. That's the way I feel about this case here. This is new discovered for me, but maybe old to you guys, okay? So with that being said, I want to read this ex parte and find out what else is in this here reading and what took place behind closed doors that was supposed to be a secret meeting. Also, because Brian Steele, the attorney that's representing Young Thug, he was feeling some type of way because he felt that, he wasn't a part of this here meeting, and he felt he should have been there. Now, once I got a chance to really read the explanation, I'm going to be honest with y'all. I don't know how this is going to turn out. I can only tell you my opinion. And in my opinion, I don't think they're going to overturn anything because it was hearing for Wooody, his attorney that was present with him, which is Caleb Bumpus, and the prosecutors who was presiding over this hearing for him being held into contempt for pleading the fifth. Now, one of my supporters slash subscriber had left a comment in my last video that I did pertaining this. And so what they said was that to go and check out the beginning of the trial. Okay, so that's what I did. I went and I checked out the beginning of the trial, went to day one, the opening statements, and I took lots of notes. And I'm glad I took the notes because I still put the minute mark where I could just go straight to the minute mark. But it did explain a lot. Now, one thing I will say is that it was notated that some of the players who was going to be witnesses in this here case had already put it in the comment. I mean, they was already in the notes, okay, that there was going to be people who's going to want to plead the fifth because they did not want to testify, and they so the state was well aware that some of these individuals did not want to testify. But I did get a chance to find out what happened to Mr. Thomas. Okay, so from my understanding, Mr. Thomas, he what happened to Mr. Thomas? He had an altercation with Woody. And it sounds like Woody got jumped at a club. Okay. And so after this, it seemed like it was just on from there. Okay. And from it being on from there, I'm gonna tell you in the results. Mr. Thomas lost his life. So it was questionable as to who was responsible. Now, what I did understand from my own understanding is that Woody went down to the authorities because it was rumored that he had did it, but he was not the trigger man. But from my reading, he was there. So that makes Woody a material witness, meaning a fact to this case. Very valuable role in this here matter. And when he went in and he talked to them and gave statements because he was fearful for his life, what ended up happening was he gave up a whole bunch of more details. There were multiple meetings between Woody and the investigators, and they were recording those conversations that you guys got a chance to see. And so from there, um, um, then now it's come time to where it's going to be this trial and he has to testify. And so now he's doing what some of the other players are doing as well. He's not the only person who was a witness or is going to be a witness in this here YSL case, but a lot of them have cold feet now. They're fearful, whatever the reasons is that they decided they don't no longer want to testify. So that's what I came up with. That's the understanding from me. So anyway, moving forward, fast forwarding to where we are today, this ex parte hearing took place outside of Young Thug's attorney and then other players' attorneys, and so they were wanting to have been a part of that. So they're feeling like they were left out, and that they think this may be grounds for dismissal or whatever. But I'm gonna be honest, the way I read this case, the information that Wody presented, the information that others presented, they're not going to throw this case out, okay? So it's going to be almost nearly impossible, and I'm going to be honest. This case is going to continue to preside in the county, and it's going to keep going on. So sometime next week, we should probably hear something that this case is going to continue, and then you'll hear more about the case as it continues to unfold or whatever. But basically, the foundation has been laid out in the opening statements from the prosecutors, and they laid it all out. They showed exactly how this is a RICO enterprise under the terms YSL record label Young Thug, right? But now what I will say in defense of it all is that, yeah, they got all this information. Yeah, they got, X, Y, and Z. But in order to, everybody has to testify. And I'm just going to be honest with y'all. So it's like, with this playing, like, you don't know what's going on. If the states are able to lay this foundation down the way it did in its open statements and put it out there, because it got this inside knowledge from Wody, another person that's supposed to be testifying, and they said it that some of these people don't want to testify. They're embarrassed to testify. Maybe they're intimidated to testify, but they do not no longer want to participate in the takedown of YSL. The record label they call Young Thug the head of the entire enterprise. Okay, so they're going for him, but they're going for the rest of the members as well. So anyway, that's what I came up with. That's my understanding. Hopefully, we're all on the same page, and I feel like I am actually caught up. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen with y'all. It's Sunday. I usually don't try to do my lives on Sundays, but for the sake of this matter, I decided to go ahead and give y'all some of my Sunday. But I'm having a family get together, so if you hear a lot of loudness in the background, just know we turning up over here celebrating a relative, my cousin's birthday, and so, yeah, I'm going to try to get in and out as quick as I can. Y'all leave y'all thoughts in the comment section, and we'll talk about it down below if you do not catch this live. Also, if you are new to this channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. And if you have not subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribers button. Only if you want to see more of this commentary or other commentary that I present here on my platform. And hit the bell notification and select all so you don't miss me when I come back and bring you guys yet another one. So with that being said, let's get right here into this here Ex-Parte reading. And let's gain our understanding from my platform to my subscribers who comes over here to hear the breakdown thoroughly through and through, and that's just what we do over here. All right, so let me get into this here. So again, this is the appearance of the counsel on behalf of the state. There was Adrienne Love was there, Simone Hilton was there, the assistant district attorneys, right? On behalf of Kenneth Copeland, there was Kayla Bumpus that was there, okay? That she was representing him. Now, the problem I have with that is that, in my opinion, while Woody was over there firing Kayla, he should have been firing his lawyer, because why would you go on vacation in the midst of the moment, right when the boom is about to happen, and he needed you, and then you send someone in there to try to, go in your favor, but you should have been there, in my personal opinion. His Woody's lawyer should have been representing him, not Kayla. But I appreciate and understand why she did go in there, to fill in for the absent lawyer who was on vacation. But I feel like that lawyer should have put that on hold, and he should have been there for his client. That's just my personal opinion. So anyway, so all this antics and these tactics and this, I can't recall, and I'm grown, and I plead the fifth. They already knew he was coming in there to do that. So that is, in my opinion, it may work in his favor, because it's not like they was not aware that these individuals was going to come in here and potentially do exactly what you guys are saying Wody do, what I've seen other people do. So it wasn't a secret, okay? So I don't know why the prosecutor is acting dumbfounded, as if they wasn't aware, when they was clearly aware that this was a potential, and this was going to possibly happen. So anyway, the ex parte hearing began at 9:10 in the morning. It was present in the chambers with Judge Glanville, the assistant attorneys, the assistant district attorney Adrian Love, and attorney Kayla Bumpus. A court reporter was in there, Christina Weaver, and investigator Antonia Long and Rashid Hamilton. So the court reporter says, okay, I'm ready whenever you are. Mrs. Love says, thank you. The concern that we wanted to bring to the court's attention as the state was twofold. One, we wanted to have the opportunity to impress upon Mr. Copeland with representation present that he faces, and we wanted to give him an opportunity to ask whatever questions he wanted to ask before he was we had to pull him in the courtroom when the jury came out. The second concern that I have is, and I wanted to bring to the court's attention, in line with the concern that I expressed on the record on Friday. I don't know what advice counsel may have offered or may be offering. That is their right and their business. As it relates to testifying, however, I do not believe that criminal exposure is a concern that is, which interest is being spoken about and protected. Mr. Melnick relayed to Mrs. Hilton on Friday that he had never heard of the statute 24507, and on Friday, he sent an email. I don't know if he intentionally copied Mr. Steele and Mr. Schwartz. I don't know if he unintentionally put my name on it, but he sent an email to Mr. Steele and Mr. Schwartz with me and Simone copied, where he said, this is the communication that I received from Mrs. Love regarding Mr. Copeland. My response was, whose interests are you protecting? Yours or Mr. Steele's? Whose clients? Which client are you protecting? Whose client? Yours or Mr. Steele's and Mr. Schwartz? He wrote back and said, you are going to get him killed, okay? You're making him a target. F you, is what he wrote in the email. So given that his concerns is that by testifying, at least the one that he conveyed to me in writing, it's not his concern, has nothing to do with exposure from the state. And if his concerns, then the court says his being whose concern? Mrs. Love says, Mr. Melnick. And see, and this is the problem, because Mr. Melnick is not there. He has Kayla there. Mr. Melnick should have been there. And that's just, again, my personal opinion. He took off after giving this information to them on Friday. In my opinion, he kind of left his client out to dry, even though he act like he's basing some concerns. But what concerns are you really basing your grounds on when you have went on vacation in the smack middle of him about to testify? Like, you deliberately, like, that timing was just so off. Okay, I'll just say it like that. The timing was extremely off. So anyway, Mrs. Love says, Mr. Melnick, if the interest that he is protecting is Mr. Copeland's freedom, he did not convey it by asking us what exposure does he face in testifying. In fact, If he's concerned that testifying will get Mr. Copeland unalive and he is not communicating with us, he's communicating with counsel for defendants. It would seem that he knows a thing or something that we don't know. Additionally, and I will let Mrs. Bumpus tell you, he has said if Mr. Copeland testifies, he's no longer representing Mr. Copeland, which is strange because if your interest is your client, then it would seem you would want to be there for him while he is testifying. And I agree, because he should have been there to, especially for this hearing, and not send Bumpus in there. So something is happening, in my opinion, between the attorney who left his client out to dry to go in this ex parte meeting with a fill-in lawyer, which is Mrs. Bumpus, and it's just unfortunate. Okay, so anyway, you okay? Let me see. Okay, you okay? I saw what happened, honey. You're fine. It's okay. No, it's okay. Okay. So let me see. Testifying. So the court. Well, he's on vacation this week, Mrs. Love. I understand. And see, I'm wondering, was that a Hail Mary to hold off on Mr. Copeland testifying until the lawyer come back in town? It didn't work in his favor, of course, but I'm thinking that's probably what the lawyer was thinking. If I just take this vacation, send Bumpus in there, I won't be back for a week. Maybe they'll delay the case. Don't put him on the stand and just go ahead and move around and then double back to Woody, okay? But that did not happen, as we've seen, okay? So anyway, Mrs. Love, I understand. That is why he was has Mrs. Bumpus here. See, and that's the problem. And he has said what he has said. And as I was saying, wait. And as I and he has says, and as I was reading the statute, the thing that is, and I was reading the statute about this particular situation, and I was reading our rules, our ethic rules, rules of conduct for attorneys, and it is clear that if any attorney, there were two things that were happening. One, Mr. Melnick had told me that he was not Mr. Copeland's lawyer. Mr. Copeland has told me, Mrs. Hilton, that Mr. Melnick was not representing him. And then rather than Mr. Copeland reaching out to Mr. Melnick apparently was in communications with Mr. Steele and Mr. Schwartz, and Mr. Melnick reaches out to Mr. Copeland and injects himself in these proceedings. What we were discussing was in no way a matter that Mr. Melnick was representing Mr. Copeland on, and that is where we are not allowed to speak with the person when they are represented by counsel. So Mr. Melnick could not have been representing Mr. Copeland on anything we were talking about, because we were talking about this case and this trial. All that aside, we would like an opportunity for the court to address Mr. Copeland with Mr. Copeland's stand-in counsel present. Mrs. Bumpus is looking at me like, Mrs. Bumpus, I'm listening, Mrs. Love, with his stand-in counsel present, and to allow Mrs. Bumpus the opportunity to explain to Mr. Copeland everything that I have just said. Her concern outside was what is the longest he can stay in jail. What I relayed to her is the statute says until he purges, until basically he unalives himself. And I don't mean that literally like go out and take yourself out, but basically unalive himself. Basically, you guys know what purges mean. You guys heard the terminology purge. Okay, so the court, by testifying, Mrs. Love, his contempt by testifying. The court, yeah. 507 is a little bit different. So, I mean, and then Mrs. Bumpus says, so until the end of this, the court says, he can be here until the end of the trial. Mrs. Bumpus, that is what I said. To the end of trial is the longest. Mrs. Love, no, it's not the longest. Even after a grand jury, if a person has been subpoenaed to testify before the grand juror, and even after the grand jury convened, has left, that person can stay in until that person purges himself of contempt by testifying. So when Woody decided, oh, okay, so since y'all gonna play this game, I gotta go and testify, right? So he decided to go ahead, get out of jail that Monday after this ex parte meeting, go ahead and testify. So they kept him until he was done testifying. So once he was completed testifying, he's just not being released of the court yet. They're still holding him in lock and key in case they need to bring him back to clarify anything moving forward in these here court proceedings. So he decided to testify in the way we saw him testifying, which was looking incompetent. How old is you? Old enough. So all of this stuff, and again, it goes back to the beginning of this attorney's district attorney's opening statement. She already was well aware that some of these people like Woody and others who were key witnesses or material witnesses was not going to be as cooperative as they wanted them to be. Okay, so this is me giving y'all a clearer understanding today. So Mrs. Bumpy goes and say, well, I'm going to look it up because it was my understanding that it was until the end of trial. Mrs. Love, nope. Here it is. Literally the words of the statutes. And so the court, he could he could be in there a while. Let's put it that way. Either way, Mrs. Bumpus, I just want to be able to give him, and then the court interjected and says, I know. It's kind of the statute says, I know. Wait, you know that you purged, but I can't keep him in there indefinitely. I've got to kind of, and then Mrs. Bumpus says, right. That is all I want to know. The court says, the whole thing is that he has the keys to his own freedom. So they gave him his own freedom by saying, the key to his freedom by saying, either you testify and you let yourself out, or you stay in there until you're willing to testify. So when he's ready to open the door to let himself out of the situation, he has to put the key in and let himself out and go on that stand and do what y'all saw him do. Now, how he did it, how he chose to do it, grown, I don't recall. Can you tell me again? All the Woody faces that we didn't see. All of that is because he does not want to cooperate. He just giving them the bare minimum by being on the stand and giving them something rather than nothing. Whether it's sufficient for their case or not, in my opinion, of course, it's insufficient, but I just want you guys to have a clear understanding like I have for myself, okay? So, anywho, it goes and says, so I've got to kind of, and then Mrs. Bumper says, right, that is all I wanted to know. The court says, the whole thing is that he has the keys to his own freedom, and that freedom is if he just gives his testimony, okay? Then he purges it. Then he purged it because he satisfied the court by testifying, right? Now, how he testifies again, that's up to him. He had the prerogative to do how he chose to do it, just like we saw people come out and play crazy, dumb, illiterate. They don't know what the people talking about, or they just, all the dumb stuff they was doing if y'all been following the trial, like I have been following the trial. And I did hear the opening statements, but not to this capacity. I really had to go back and gain the understanding since I'm now, reporting on this case. I want to make sure I have the accurate information as you all have, right? So anyway, Mrs. Bumpin says, right. Mrs. Love says, and hold on, let me pull this up. And whatever that testimony is, we know what we believe it to be, but we don't know what it is. We can't talk about it. We don't, we don't know what he's going to say. We have an idea. We know what he's told us. Mrs. Bumpus, yeah. Mrs. Love, and our concerns is that our concern, I know the court said, essentially, you intimidated that Mr. Melnick probably told him, essentially, you should testify. They are not they can't do anything with your testimony. Which they cannot, because he has that immunity deal. So just go out there, do what you got to do, and purge yourself, open the door to your freedom, and go on out there and do what you do. And then whatever happens, happens, because he satisfied the courts to a degree, even though he didn't repeat what was said in those investigative statements. As we clearly saw, he did not want to repeat any of that stuff. He just said, well, I was just telling y'all whatever y'all wanted to tell y'all because y'all was locking me up. Y'all wouldn't let me go. You know what I'm saying? So basically, this is what it is. And that's exactly what we saw here happen, right? But let me just say this. Although that's what he did on the stand and the reasons why he did what he did, and then how that could affect his investigative statements that he went voluntarily gave to them, which opened up this entire can of worms and got everybody locked up, 5 YSL members, 28 additional racketeering members, all because of what he said and other people did say as well. He's not the only person that's supposed to come and had testified in this here matter that went in there, gave statements, and then decided, now, you know what, I ain't about to do it. You know, they started feeling nervous. They anxiety is all, taking over. Depression is affecting them. All sorts of stuff is happening, and they like, So anyway, but it's still, if you look at it, what he gave to them was this whole blueprint to present this case as it is, and he's and I said this, he's throwing the case. When he was up there talking about plead the fifth, and then he came back and he was talking about grown and you fired, all that stuff he was doing, it was given, throw this away, because he's not trying to send Young Thug to jail for the rest of his life. He has a change of heart. I don't know how much that's going to help him in the long run, because at the end of the day, he has this stigma on his name, and it's not a good stigma. And the streets are talking, and they're looking at him all sorts of which way, right? But he feels comfortable. He feels safe. He feel like he's good. He don't feel he has nothing to worry about. He's actively outside, as you guys see. He's all over social media. He's getting comfortable with social media, and he's recording and going live streaming, and he's connecting with other people, and he's doing a lot, but that is very upsetting to the courts, I would say. So let me see. So you should testify that they can't do anything with your testimony, which is true. But what we overheard being said was they are going to hammer you, as if we were going to expose Kenneth Copeland too. And then Mrs. Bumper said, you heard that? And then Mrs. Love said, yeah. Mr. Melnick told Mr. Copeland, we're going to hammer him. The court. Now, to be fair, and I think Mrs. Bumpus, as an advocate, or anybody has got to tell him, he's going to face some pretty significant cross-examination. Mrs. Bumpus, yeah, I think that's what he meant. The court, I mean, he's got about 10, Mrs. Love goes and say, so he meant the defense is going to hammer him? Mrs. Bumpus, no. Just in general, it's not going to be hey, da 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 da. Mrs. Love, he knew that. He had already been expressing that. The court. But I mean, I think that if he's concerned about that, well, but it's all in the message and the packaging, in terms of, I think Mr. Copeland is, a savvy person. But, he's certainly going to be subject to a thorough and sifting cross-examination. Mrs. Love. And the other thing is that, Mrs. Bumpus, can I just say something in Attorney Melnick's defense in response, just for the record? Mrs. Love, yes. Mrs. Bumpus. So the reason that he does not want to move forward with representation, what I have been told, if he decides to testify, is that he does not feel like he can. He does not know what was said outside of his presence. So he does not feel like he can adequately represent him or counsel him, because he doesn't know what was told to the state when he wasn't there, Mrs. Love. But the thing is that the only thing that he should be concerned about is the criminal exposure of the exposure that Kenneth Copeland is criminally, and there is nothing. There is literally nothing. The statute is quite clear that we can do that about The only thing that would put him in harm's way is a lie and a refusal to testify after being ordered to do so by the court. So if he was to lie, of course, right? And by a lie, we don't mean like, oh, I think you lying. It would have to be, something obvious, because we can always impeach. But if he literally perjures himself, that's something different. We can't help that. We can't control that. We only say, tell the truth. I don't care how bad it is, just tell the truth. So, like he says, I didn't go down to the police station, the court. And I think part of his challenge, Mrs. Bumpus, may be that you need to assure him, look, I'm going to be here. And if you think that they are asking you a question, they being the state of the defense or the defense is asking you a question that's going to bring out other crimes that he's going to be able to look to you and say, can I have a chance to talk with you? Mrs. Love, that's exactly right. Mrs. Bumpus, Mrs. Love, see? But that's just it. Mrs. Bumpus, no, he's not. Mrs. Love, hold on. That's just it, Judge. The problem is that there's been an assertion that people are representing. And I'm not talking about you, Mrs. Bumpus. Yeah, Mrs. Love. There's been an assertion that people are representing that their biggest concern is his best interest. And then they are just not here. And Mrs. Bumpus is saying she's not in a position to do that. Mrs. Bumpus, no, I'm not saying I'm not in a position. I'm saying that the agreement between Mr. Copeland and Melnick, who I'm standing in for, is that if he chooses to testify, I'm to get him to sign this paper that says that then discharge Melnick as his rep. That's their agreement. I can't do nothing about that. Mrs. Love, that sounds weird. That does not sound like something in Mr. Copeland's best interest. That sounds like protecting somebody else's best interest. If you talk, I ain't going to, I'm not going to represent you. I don't even know what to do with that. Mrs. Bumpus, well, he said he does not know what was said. And so what I'm getting just from that piece right there, and I just said this, and this is my opinion, I feel that his attorney, who happened to go on vacation right at the start of his testimony, left his client out to dry like that, put in a replacement attorney, which Mrs. Bumpus, and she has absolutely nothing to do with this matter, but she was just standing in the gap for his would-be attorney, Melnick, and Melnick is threatening his client, if you testify, I ain't representing you. So it's like, well, what type of representation is that? Why do he got a lawyer that's threatening, if you don't testify, I'm going to walk off your case? So it sounds like something in that wash ain't right, okay? And that's, again, my opinion. If you guys agree or you disagree, please leave your thoughts in the comment section. I would love to hear your opinion on why you think his attorney happened to take a vacation the day he has to testify, and then he pleads the fifth. He gets locked up. He goes back to court on that Monday. His lawyer's not present because he's on vacation. Mrs. Bumpus comes in place of his attorney, and then now she wants him to sign off if he is going to testify. So it sounds like that lawyer was there to make sure he don't testify. But why would you leave him out to dry to not testify, but yet he had to testify because your legal counsel is not there to support your client? So what was Mrs. Bumpus supposed to do? Okay, those are questions that I would have been asking. So why you saying she fired, like I said, he should have been telling Mr. Melnick, you fired. Period. Okay, because you got him in a situation where he is having to, get up there and forcefully testify when he wants to just plead the fifth. But that's not an option for him. So why wasn't his counsel giving him the understanding as to what his options were? That's between them and them. But y'all, again, leave your thoughts in the comment section. So anyway, Mrs. Love, it doesn't matter what was said. Mrs. Bumpus, right, Mrs. Love, it doesn't matter. And he didn't ask us. He didn't even inquire. What have you all talked about? He has been talking to Brian Steele and Max Short. That's it. He is not talking to us. And in fact, Mr. Copeland asks to speak with us. Mr. Melnick barges in and gets between Mrs. Hilton and Mr. Copeland and literally keeps us from talking to him before he gets called to the stand. And that's troubling. Mrs. Bumpus, well, I think what happened was, and I say this because I previously represented Mr. Copeland previously on his other stuff, so I know when this is just what I think happened. I think how Attorney Melnick came involved was his representation of other, because he took my place. Copeland fired me and hired Melnick. And then this came about, and I think so at the beginning, Melnick was representing him, and then Mrs. Love, in this criminal matter that he had, but that's resolved, Mrs. Bumpus. But when this case started, Melnick called me and told me that he was representing him as a witness at the beginning. I can assert that, Mrs. Love. Melnick has never in life, Mrs. Bumpus. This is 2 years ago, Mrs. Love. Melnick did not. As a matter of fact, less than 2 years ago, when Copeland was sitting in jail for something else he had done, Melnick said, I don't represent him. He told me, I don't represent him. And people were in the room. He was on speaker. He told me he did not represent him. Now, he ultimately did come about and represent him, but when we were trying to get, I guess, Mrs. Bumpus, something, yeah, Mrs. Love, Copeland was like, he's not my lawyer. I don't have a lawyer. He's not my lawyer. And then Mrs. Bumpus, are you talking about recently, Mrs. Love? So recently, Copeland said that Melnick was not his lawyer. Mrs. Bumpus, right. Mrs. Love, when Copeland was in jail, Melnick told me he was not his lawyer, but our understanding was that Melnick was his lawyer for those criminal charges. And so the person that came in and argued, or at least stood in for him on his bond and then on his subsequent plea, was Melnick. But I don't know whose interest he would be representing when he's not talking to us about what we've spoken to Copeland about. He could ask us and we would tell him, so I don't know why he would withdraw his representation of him. If his interest is Kenneth Copeland, then why would you pull out? That's a good question. The court, that doesn't make sense, Mrs. Love. At this point, where he would face the most peril, if that is his concern, if his concern is, I don't know what they talked about, so I don't know what the court, and I thought that Mrs. Hilton had a list of questions for Mr. Copeland anyway. Mrs. Love, she did. The court, well, how come you all can't, Mrs. Love, he didn't ask to see those. He did not, and not only that, the court, well, can't you all share that with Mrs. Bumpus, Mrs. Love? Well, Mrs. Hilton has already shared it with Mr. Copeland, and we certainly will share it generally speaking. Mrs. Bumpus, can I read this email that Melnick sent me? I don't know if this will help you understand what he's saying. It says, hey, Kayla, I wasn't able to see Kenneth today. He went on Saturday and tried to talk to him before his flight. But I have talked to his family. So at first, Kenneth was going to testify, but has now decided to take the fifth. He may change his mind on Monday. If he does, then he's agreed to discharge me as his attorney. So sounds like, again, the attorney that was supposed to have been representing Copeland was not going to represent him if he goes forth and testify. So he was advising Copeland to plead the fifth, and Copeland pled the fifth, but Copeland got locked up, and then Bumpus comes in replace of Melnick, which would have been his attorney, and now that he has to go forward because the only way he can get out of jail is to do something. So it's like he threw his client to the wolves as forcefully, in my opinion, and forcefully having him testify against his will. So that's why, this case is strange and unusual, because now it is being said that he they were aware that this was a potential. And again, going back to the beginning of the opening statement that one of my subscribers had me go look at, and I did. I didn't get to part two, but I got to day one. And I'll tell you, it was said in the opening statements that some of these people are embarrassed. They don't want to testify now. They may not, you know what I'm saying? So she was already aware when she gave her opening statement. So I think that may play some valuable role in this here hearing, but we have to wait and see. I'll get in the comment section momentarily. I really just want to try to get through the reading because I got company here and I want to tend to my company, but I want to give y'all some of my diligence of my due time on this here good Sunday. All right. So God bless each and every one of us and take me out of the reading and fulfill it with all that we see here on the screen and not my own. Okay. But just my opinion. Now, he went on Saturday and tried to talk to him before his flight, but I have talked to his family. So at first Kendall was going to testify, but has now decided to take the fifth. And again, she was aware that people was willing to testify and some was not, or was willing to possibly take the fifth, or just don't want to cooperate at all any further at this point, right? So decided to take the fifth. He may change his mind come Monday because they're forcing him, and I shouldn't say they're forcing him, because honestly it's just in the legal documentation that this is a part of his stipulations of what something he must do. Okay, the immunity was gonna not withhold because he has to testify. Now, if he goes on there and he purges himself, or he puts himself in anything that they can use against him outside of this, I believe they would not be able to use it unless it's something impeachable, right? Obvious is what they use in the word terms. So he may change his mind come Monday. If he does, then he's agreed to discharge me as his attorney. This isn't out of bad feelings, but I was not present when he met with the DA's office. So what he's saying is, because the attorney was not there when he went and met with the DA, I guess when he was giving all those particular statements, he wasn't there representing Mr. Copeland, and nobody was representing Mr. Copeland. So really, those statements can be admissible, but should they be admissible would be a question. I don't have that answer. If you think you know it, please put your thoughts in the comment section. Love to hear from you, okay? Let me see what else. What are we are? Okay, so agreed to discharge. This isn't out of bad feelings, but I was not present when he met with the DA's office, so I cannot really help him with his testimony. Okay, so that's why he would have to pull himself off. And then he gave me the discharge and told me that if he decides to testify, then he's to sign this, Mrs. Love, and that's just it. It's like you never know what somebody is going to ask. And if he's concerned about putting him in legal jeopardy, then it would seem like he would remain and allow Mr. Copeland access to counsel. When Mr. Copeland is concerned that he's about to walk into an area that puts him in legal jeopardy, Mrs. Bumpus, you can't switch how he gets called. Mrs. Love, see, that's not in Mr. Copeland's best interest. That's in the defendant's best interest. When you say switch in how he gets called, what does that have to do with anything, Mrs. Bumpus? I don't know. Maybe he's saying he can't do it because he can't get his refundable ticket. Mrs. Love. Wait. Mr. Love, that is not what he said in the email to you, and that is not what he relayed to the court. And his concern have nothing to do with, the court says, he was very much, Mrs. Bumpus. I tried to go back and watch as much as I could, the court telling me what that he was going on vacation. And I said, well, you inserted yourself in this. I said, really? You need to come on Monday, Mrs. Love. So he can't force Mr. Copeland to discharge him just because Mr. Copeland decided to testify. The court, I think you are in until it's done. I mean, Mrs. Bumpus, who, me? The court, yeah. I mean, that's just if he testifies. You've got to kind of, Mrs. Love. And frankly, Your Honor, I know that if a person faces criminal contempt, they are entitled to representation if they want it. This being a civil contempt matter, the court, not necessarily. Anybody who's facing contempt can get counsel. I mean, not anybody, but Mrs. Bumpus, I can't stay. How long is this going to take? Mrs. Love, it might take some days. Mrs. Bumpus, Mrs. Love. And see, that's just it. And I don't mean I think Mrs. Bumpus is put in a precarious position. She's not the one that stood up and injected herself into this. They reached out to her and she did him a favor. But ultimately, it seems as if Mr. Melnick is stalling and attempting to delay and hamper and hinder our proceedings. And that is a problem because that has nothing to do with the best interest of Kenneth Copeland. And that has nothing to do with Kenneth Copeland's exposure if he testifies. You're going to break that here. That's no. You can't do that. And expose. Wait. Go back. Has nothing to do with the best interest of Kenneth Copeland. And that has nothing to do with Kenneth Copeland's exposure if he testifies. Get it and go. And that has nothing to do with Kenneth Copeland's exposure if he testifies. Just to answer the question about what he is exposed to, the statute is very, very clear. It literally says that no testimony or any evidence required under the court's order or any information directly or indirectly derived from such testimony or evidence shall be used against the person in any proceedings or prosecution for a crime or offense concerning which he testifies or produces evidence under the court order. I can see how they work. Okay, Prissy, if you want to call in, Queen, you know you can always call me on the call-in number, and we can work it out together if you want to come up here with me, Queen. Because it's going to be a lot to type. So if you want to come up here and we can break it down together, come on, Queen. I'm waiting on you. Let me see. So that is saying even if he got on the stand and said, the court, he started talking about an unrelated crime, which is what the biggest thing I think he's probably thinking about is that, yeah, there's a lot of stuff they could ask me about. Mrs. Love, right. The court. That is not known to a lot of people in that, he could also invoke his Fifth Amendment with the advice of counsel if it was some other particular crime. But, Mrs. Love, but even that, we would not even, the court, even that, he still have to testify? The Mrs. Love, literally, right? The saw lays, I guess they were trying to say the law, but it says the saw lays. And then it goes to say the court. Yeah, I mean, anything he testifies to. Mrs. Love, we do this. Mrs. Bumpus, okay. And then about the delay or stall. Isn't it true or is it not true that he had a lead? Unknown. Okay. Let me get my co-host up here with me, guys. So I got my co-host up here with me. I'm going to stop for a second and then we'll get back into it. What's going on, Queen? Hey.
Hello. I didn't want to stop you.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I love it. So I just want to break it down so we get this clarity. You were saying something. You said, I could see how they were trying to save themselves and careers. They probably thought he was going to stall the case as well. Okay. So you want to go? Yeah. You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, it looks like that they were already trying to back out. Maybe the lawyer went on vacation to get out of it. Mm-hmm. So they weren't really apprised or informed of this case. It doesn't look like they had any notes or anything. Right. And so instead of messing up the case, I can see where they were trying to get out of it.
Yeah. And it would have been a stall tactic on his lawyer part, as they are, pretty much accusing the lawyer of doing. And then Mrs. Love coming there in the gap of the absent attorney, and then Woody terminating her is given. But see, when I went to go look at the opening statement, they was well aware that this was a potential, that this was going to happen.
Yeah, because it looks like it's a possibility that he might change his story, might lie, perjure himself, and it don't look bad on them.
Yeah. Yeah, so they was aware. They could play like they wasn't aware, but they literally was aware of what he was going to do. He didn't want to testify. He whatever he said, he said. He did not want to come back in there and repeat anything. He just wanted it to go away and move on, and that's it. That's all. And then when he even went on the lead attorney's platform, he gave that same scenario about the two lawyers that he felt was trying to get him to work on a case, I guess, and they was trying to manipulate the situation and make it appear as if he was willing to be a cooperative witness. He spoke of that on the Leeds channel, and I think this is what he was talking about. These lawyers right here, possibly. So let's continue. So they filed this since December. So Mrs. Love, we have not, and if you got your notes, let me see what page I'm on. If you want, follow me. I'm on page 42 of 81. I'm starting at the top.
I'm already there.
Okay, cool. Okay, cool. So, Mrs. Love, we have nothing to do with any of that. He injected himself into this. The court, yeah. See, the problem is, Mrs. Love, he stepped in the court. That when you get involved, I don't know, you have a lead, Mrs. Love, right? You, the court, and unless you filed that lead into this case, you don't have a lead for my case, Mrs. Love, right? Mrs. Bump is okay, Mrs. Love, and he did not. The court, so he didn't have one, Mrs. Love. Mr. Copeland's been a witness and a name on this witness list since the court. So since he said, well, I represent him, I'm like, okay, well, you don't have a leave that's filed in our case. Mrs. Bump is okay, Mrs. Love. So he did this to himself and he did it to you. But we have to, that is just where it is. And I don't know that that's just where we are. Mrs. Bump is so judge. You are going to make me stay if he chooses to testify? The court. I am because you're his lawyer. You're his lawyer. You're standing in. You're a stand-in lawyer at this point, Mrs. Bumpus. Your Honor, I don't have a problem with that. I'm not ready. So it looks from the outside in, Bumpus, Melnick, and this because she really is not her fault, but he put her there because he's not there. She don't want to. She don't know this case to represent him thoroughly, like to stand in the gap like the way she's not knowing. But to me, there was a tactic on his lawyer, in my opinion, possibly was working with Steele and the other attorney as they suggested. But that's just my opinion. It's not a fact, but that is what the state is saying. And reading this, it would give me that eyesight to say they may be onto something here, okay? They're not as dumb as y'all think. So anyway, Mrs. Love, if the court, there's nothing for you to be ready about. I mean, here's the thing. I think the only thing you've got to kind of ask him about is, and see, and that's a compromising situation for Woody lawyer Bumpus that's standing in, and as well as him. To me, that's a problem. And it's like, why are y'all rushing his testimony? If the lawyer's going to be out for 1 week, why not? I know, it looks like a delay. Is there nothing they could have done to just move the case and then double back to Woody's testimony? But I know they got it in line of I know they got it in line the way they wanted the case to lay out, but this is a unusual circumstance where your lawyer is taking a vacation the day you got to testify. So the lawyer was basically getting out of trying to let me walk away so my client don't testify. And then in the process of his client saying, I plead the fifth, gets locked up. Now, in order you get out, you got to testify. Well, his lawyer's not there. Mrs. Bumpus is there. She can't stay. So what do? He wants to get out of there. So he's not going to have a choice but to testify. And again, it may not be the way they want it, but he was able to purge and give them something, okay? So anyway, let me go back to this. So, I mean, here's the thing. I think the only thing you've got to kind of ask him about is, look, here is the question. Give me this little girl. She is all over the place. I am stuck with her right now. I can't leave her outside because there's too much going on. So anyway, let me see. I think the only thing you've got to kind of ask him is, look, here is the question. The state is going to ask you, all right, is there anything else that could hurt you that might ask you? And as long as you have knowledge of that, then I think that you are fine because the state's only going to get into this Now, the reason you want to know what's going to hurt you is the defendants know more about Kenneth Copeland than anybody else. So they are probably going to kind of, Mrs. Bumpus, what about if I say I can't do it? Then Melnick needs to come back, right? Am I going to be in trouble? Because I was only for Monday. That's what I was told. I was given specific, Mrs. Love. If Copeland said, I don't know what Mr. Copeland wants, it's his choice, Mrs. Bumpus. Can he say he doesn't want Melnick, Mrs. Love? He can say whatever he wants. It's his choice, Mrs. Bumpus. Don't the judge, but the judge is saying, Mrs. Love, I don't think he can be forced to have representation if he does not want, need, or say he wants it, because we have offered. We have done everything to clear him of judicial exposure. He's not, there is nothing he can say. He could lie. That puts him in, the court peril. Mrs. Love, peril. But he can't talk about a crime that we could then prosecute him for. The court. That is involving this or some other place. Mrs. Love, right, Mrs. Bumpus, I understand that, but Mrs. Love, and we can't use his testimony to go find evidence to prosecute him for the stuff he talks about. Basically, he is literally shielded, okay? Mrs. Bumpus, I would have to agree with you that I don't think that's the concern. Isn't that what you said, Mrs. Love? Well, the court said that, Mrs. Bumpus. No, I'm saying with Mr. Copeland not testifying, you said you don't think that his concern is criminal exposure, or you do think that you do think that is what he's worried about? The court, do you think that's he's fearful? Do you think that he is fearful of testifying for other reasons, like for his personal safety? Mrs. Bumpus, right? Mrs. Love, that is what Mr. Melnick said to me in an email I can pull up. He said, Mrs. Bumpus, but you don't believe that, Mrs. Love. You are going to get him unalive. That's what he said. We ain't gonna unalive him. Wait, where did I go? I just lost the thought. Hold on. We ain't gonna unalive him. I can show you the email, but we're not going to unalive Kenneth Copeland. So who is he talking about? So what are you trying to do? The court. That is a collateral second and third order effect. Let's pray it does not. But, Mrs. Love, obviously the court, first he has to give testimony though. That's what he has to do. He's got to give the testimony, whatever it is, good, bad, or indifferent. Good, bad, or indifferent, I should say. Mrs. Love, so we would like, with the court's permission, they have brought him over, and he was supposed to be the first one up. So I guess they went to get him. They might be over here with him now. The court, is he here now, Mrs. Love? I don't know. Judge Glanville exited chambers at 9:33 in the morning. Mrs. Love, we would like to just go into another courtroom and talk to him. Give you a chance to talk to him, and then give you an opportunity to explain to him. The court reporter, we're off the record. Brief recess. Judge Glanville and Mr. Chamberlain entered chambers at 9:34 in the morning. Mrs. Love, Mrs. Hilton has been communicating with him. I'd like to grab her from downstairs and have her come up. The court, where is Mr. Copeland? Mrs. Chamberlain, they took him upstairs to the tank in 9. The court, okay, can we bring him out too? Can we? Mr. Chamberlain, your chambers is being used. Your courtroom is being used. The court, let's bring him in here. Mr. Chamberlain, all right, so let me see if I can get that done. The court, let's bring him in here, okay? Thank you. Well, just bring him in here. The proceedings stood in recess from 9:34 in the morning to 10:03 a.m. Mr. Copeland's entered chambers at 10:03 a.m. Also present were Judge Glanville, Assistant District Attorney Simone Hilton, and Attorney Kayla Bumpus, Court Reporter Christina Weaver, Investigator Antonio Long, and Rashid Hamilton, and Deputy Houston. Deputy McPherson, Sergeant Brown, and Sergeant Hall with the Fulton County Sheriff's Department. The court, okay, Mr. Copeland, can you let him know I got a hearing problem? Mrs. Bumpus, okay. He said, he is hard of hearing. The court, that makes two of us. They was being sarcastic. I've got a hearing that's coming on the 27th of January. Of June. So I'll try and talk loud. Is it okay if Mr. Copeland? Yeah, I can read lips. The court, okay, good. Mr. Copeland, good morning. Mr. Copeland, good morning. The court, all right, I just wanted to bring you over and let you talk with Mrs. Bumpus and see if there is anything that you need to ask of your counsel or Mrs. Hilton or the state or the court before we bring you out this morning, because we would like to hear your testimony. And that is kind of where we are at this point in time. So is there anything you want to ask, Mr. Copeland? Well, I want to speak to you personally that I have never been truthful a day in my life until I just made this statement right now. Woo! That's the only statement he was honest about. He was. He said this is the only time he ever been truthful is right now. He ain't never told the truth a day in his life. My goodness, he a fool for that one. Okay, let me see. Where did I go? The only thing I've been truthful about his testimony. Whatever you know. Okay, so he said, okay, well, the only thing you can give is wait. Where did I go? Wait, I went too far up. He said, until I just made this statement right now. I don't comprehend none of this stuff that's going on. The court, okay, well, the only thing you can give is truthful testimony. Whatever you know is whatever you know. So I'm wondering, can that be problematic for him? Because he's acknowledging in this writing that he lied about everything and that he ain't been truthful not one time in his life up until right now. So him acknowledging he's been lying, the testimony he's given has been a lie. The investigation statements was lies, although they was able to corroborate it. But he's saying they were lies. I wonder how they're going to go around that. I think they're going to try to impeach him. He's not going to walk away from this case just like that without doing some type of time. He's going to be convicted for something. They're going to impeach him, in my opinion. Any thoughts? Go ahead.
He lied to authorities then.
Yeah. Because you just wasted a lot of taxpayers' money. You lied. You then conjured up all these so-called lies, and then you telling them you ain't never told the truth not one time in your entire life, and this is the first time you telling the truth that you've been lying your whole life, and that statement is your truth. So yeah, and anything he says going forward, even in cross-examination or direct, is pretty much going to be lies because he's never told the truth before in his life. So I think it's problematic. What do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
Problematic.
Okay. Just making sure we're on the same page. Okay, so here we go. Moving forward. Let me go back up a notch. Okay, he said that it's been chosen right now. I don't comprehend none of this stuff. Okay, the court said, okay, well, the only thing you can give is truthful testimony. Whatever you know is whatever you know. That's it. Okay, so Mrs. Hilton and what we'll say, and Mr. Copeland and I, we have talked about this. I'm not sure what your concerns are, what concerns that you expressed to Mr. Melnick last week. But if any of your concerns deal with being locked up for anything, you can't. Like, there's nothing that can happen. The feds, Mrs. Bumpus, well, that's not. Mrs. Hilton, it is true. Mrs. Bumpus, no. I said that's not his concern. Mrs. Hilton, if his concerns is safety, we need to know that. Like, that's not expressed. So we don't know what the concern is so that we can try to resolve the concern. This is what I'm saying. Mr. Copeland and I have had conversations before. I understand some of his concerns is potentially criminally liability, hence why we gave you immunity. So he didn't tell them that he had fear, that he felt something was going to happen to them, because then they may have customized his immunity along the lines of his safety, right?
Right.
Yeah, because they said that wasn't the conversation that they had. The conversation they had is that he will potentially be criminally liable for something. He never said, well, I'm worried about my safety if I testify on the stand and put my face all out there all over social media and all over the world to see and label me as something that, they're labeling him as, quote unquote snitch, rat, however y'all put it. So he never told them those concerns. So because he didn't express those concerns, and even still in this meeting, he didn't express those concerns. How can they address it, right? They only worried about the potential criminal liability because that's the only thing that he was standing on. So anyway, hence why we gave you immunity. So the federal statute of limitation done. The state statute of limitation done. So there's nothing. Like, I researched it this weekend again. Both those statute of limitations for what you and I talked about, which is in 2015 or before, done. Okay, so you can't be prosecuted for anything you testify federally or statewide. Immune, period. So if that is the concern, there is none because you cannot be prosecuted. The federal statute of limitation is 5 years. So anything in 2015, 5 years would have been in 2020. Anything statewide in 4 years, it would have been in 19. Finished. So next concern. What may happen in the streets? What we have talked about, what we can do as far as living and all of that, we have had those conversations. So I'm trying to express to you, come on, get up here. Say hi. They want to see you. They ain't seen you in a long time. Say hi to the people. Say hi. Say hi. Say hi. Look at the camera right there. Look. See yourself? Look. Hi. Say hi. You see yourself? Go ahead, say hi. Yeah. That's baby. You see baby?
But he already, with that immunity, he is safe. And he can go there and tell everything.
You said it.
I don't know what his safety concerns. If he's been bullied, he needs to tell them. Somebody's trying to hinder his testimony. He needs to speak up.
Right. But see, he's not saying that. And she said, like, they had these conversations back in 2015, and they already had expressed whatever it was. But if it was about the streets, what we have talked about, what we can do as far as living and all of that, we have had those conversations. So I'm trying to express to you, we do not want you locked up. I don't know how many times I've got to tell that to you. What I've got to say to you, we do not want you sitting in decab or whenever they got you because of this. Okay, so I know you wanted to talk to me on Friday before you walked into court. We weren't able to talk. If you still want to talk with or without Mrs. Bumpus, I'm here, but we do not want you in custody. You will not, this order, I don't know if you kept your copy of the order, but this order says you are immune from prosecution. Any of it, literally. Judge, you might want to close your ears. If you confess to a murder or on the stand, if we don't have any other independent evidence outside of what you say on the stand, you are immune from prosecution from what you say in court. So again, I don't know what was communicated to you on Friday. I have no idea, but what the state has assured you, which I have assured you in our private conversations with Mr. Long, as I'm saying in front of Mrs. Bumpus, as I told you, that is what this order says. The court. And that is direct or cross-examination, Mrs. Hilton. And that is direct or cross-examination, the court. So if you are worried about what the defendants may ask you, because they may know your business, but if they ask you about things that you might think you might have some liability with, you can't be prosecuted for any of those things, okay? So Mr. Copeland says, I got family members watching this trial, and I don't want my nephew and them to hear the things that I may be involved in and think it's okay, Mrs. Hilton. But I think that's a separate conversation you can have with them as a honest individual, like, look, nephews, I done lived the life that I don't want you to live. Don't go through what I've been through. But that's something you can have outside of being in jail, because that's a better conversation you can have with your nephews in person. But they should not have to come to the DeKalb County Jail because you are being held in contempt. You can have that conversation with your nephews tomorrow in person. You can have that conversation with them. You can have that conversation with anybody. You know what's coming up this weekend? Why are we in jail? What are we doing, Mr. Copeland? But y'all did this intentionally, Mrs. Hilton. No, we did not. You and I had this conversation, Mr. Copeland, on a Friday morning. Mr. Copeland, you knew my child's birthday was next week, Mrs. Hilton. But what did I tell you when we met with each other? I said to you, you asked me, what is the one thing that's going to go in, what is the one thing that's going to get me in jail? Didn't you ask me that? And what was my response? If you plead the fifth. And that is exactly what you did on the stand, Mr. Copeland. But that did. But what did I tell you before I got to that point? I told you the whole time on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Mrs. Hilton. But I told you we were giving you immunity, Mr. Copeland. That I was pleading the fifth, Mrs. Hilton. No, you did not, Mr. Copeland. I told you every day I was pleading the fifth. Mrs. Hilton, no, you did not. And we told you, Mr. Copeland, I told you my concern, Mrs. Hilton. And we said we could give you immunity. You said your concern is what they know about you. And when you said that, I said, well, you know stuff about them. And then I said, whatever your concerns are, we can give you immunity, Mr. Copeland. So I didn't tell you I lied on them to get myself out of the situation, Mrs. Hilton. You said you was a liar. That's what you said. You said you were a liar. Mrs. Bumpus, was this recorded? Mrs. Hilton, no, Mrs. Bumpus. And did he ever say that Melnick was his attorney? Mrs. Hilton, no. This week, when we first met you in the car on Friday, we asked you, is Mr. Melnick your attorney? You said, he's not my attorney. I haven't even talked to him. Mr. Copeland, no, I never said he's not my attorney. I said I haven't talked to him. Mrs. Hilton, you said he's not your attorney. You haven't talked to him. And see, the problem is that wasn't even documented. They don't have no records that he told them this. So because his lawyer Bump is in the gap is asking, well, did he tell you this? So now it becomes a he say, she say. So now he's putting it on a record. Well, I did tell you this, and she's putting it on a record. No, you didn't. So now one has to believe, well, did he say it or did he not? And I don't even know how relevant, because if the bottom line is this is what he's saying, he's being consistent, and that's what he is saying. Okay. So anyway. You said he's not your attorney. You haven't talked to him. Then we continue have a conversation. At no point you ever say to us, "Hey, I want Mr. Melnick here. Hey, put Mr. Melnick on the phone, Mr. Copeland. You didn't make me feel like I needed him, Mrs. Hilton. But if you needed him, we would have said, if you would have needed Mr. Melnick, we would have said to you, okay, just call him. So, I mean, that is our position. We don't want you in jail. We just want you to be able to purge yourself by testifying. Whatever your truth is what your truth is. But you've just got to answer the question. We believe that whatever your truth is what your truth is. We know what you said before. I don't know what you're going to say on the stand, but what we know is pleading the fifth is going to keep you in custody. That's what I know. Now, how you answer your questions is how you answer your questions. I know what you said before, and I know what you said later. I mean, I know what you said before, and I don't know what you are going to say on the stand, because you and I never went into full details about any of it. But what I don't want is you to be sitting here in custody, Mr. Copeland. You did it, Mrs. Hilton. I did not do it. You did it by pleading the fifth, Mr. Copeland. Oh, can you read this part? I gotta get her right quick. Can you read that for me? Prissy?
Okay.
Go ahead. Take it over from Mr. Copeland's court. Thank you. Come on, Princess.
Okay. Come on. No, no, I never said he's not my attorney. I said I have. Wait a minute. How did I do that? Give me just a second. It just jumped back.
But don't you got your notes?
Hold on. And y'all asked for the immunity. I'm sorry, my thing just jumped. And it just driving me crazy. And talk to him. There you go.
Come on. You want out there, Bob?
And then y'all asked for this immunity. And listen, Mr. Copeland, y'all told me before you went to the judge with whatever the thing called you went to him with, you told me that I cannot. Well, I can't. When I'm asked the question, I can say I don't recall or I don't know. You told me that if I plead the fifth, I mean something. Why would I plead the fifth to something I ain't do? And I said that you don't know what I did and what I ain't do. And then you was like, something. And then y'all asked for this immunity. And I was like, it was something. And then Friday came, and then y'all go tell me, oh, we went to the judge with this, so you got to testify. If you don't testify, the judge gonna lock you up. Miss Hilton, right. But that was based upon what you, Mr. Copeland. But I told y'all that, Miss Hilton. No, you didn't, Mr. Copeland. You said, why would I plead the fifth to something I didn't do? And I said, you don't know what happened, Miss Hilton. And I said, I don't know what happened. Only you know and them know, I said. But you never said, I'm pleading the fifth. You said, what if I do this? What if I do this? What if I do this? Mr. Copeland, I told you. I said, I'm going to plead you said, why would you plead the fifth to something that you know you didn't do? Mr. Bump, I'm sorry, Miss Bumpton. So if you didn't have immunity prior to, is that what you're saying? That you feel like he didn't have immunity prior to? Mr. Copeland, immunity came Friday, right when I went to jail. Miss Hilton, the immunity only came after Mr. Melnick. Miss Bumpin, hold on. Miss Hilton, the immunity came after Mr. Melnick sent us an email saying, my client is pleading the fifth. That was on Thursday evening at 6. Miss Bumpin, okay. Miss Hilton, so after that, that was an emphatic, he is pleading the fifth. Miss Bumpin, Miss Hilton, we came and we got this signed. Miss Bumpin, And then Friday morning came. Miss Bumpin, okay. You want me to continue?
Okay, I'm back. Go ahead. I take it. So, Mrs. Hilton, you was doing so good, girl. I was getting comfortable. Mrs. Hilton, so between Friday evening, Mr. Melnick reached out to us, said he represents him. He's pleading the fifth. Mrs. Bump is okay. And when was the last time you talked to him before Melnick got involved? Mrs. Hilton, we talked to him earlier that day on Thursday. Mrs. Bump is okay. And then how did speaks inaudibly to Mr. Copeland? Mr. Copeland, he called me. Mr. Bump is okay. Mrs. Bump is okay. I was just trying to get a timeline. Mrs. Hilton, sure, right. So we have been talking since last Friday. So I met with Mr. Copeland last Friday, I think out in the neighborhood. Then he came on Tuesday for court. We talked briefly on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday he came. Mr. Copeland, Thursday. Mrs. Hilton, no, I think he only came 2 days, so it had to be Wednesday and Thursday he came. It wasn't Tuesday. It was Wednesday and Thursday he came. And then on Thursday, once we left, is when Mr. Melnick reached out to us and said, my client is pleading the fifth. And at that point, it was when we went the next morning and got the immunity motion. And then we spoke on Friday morning. I handed Mr. Copeland this agreement and let him know that he has immunity, and that anything he says we cannot use. And then Mr. Melnick came, and then we had court, Mrs. Bumpus. So you are pretty much saying you did not ask for this, Mr. Copeland. I didn't, Mrs. Hilton, but we gave it. He doesn't have to ask for it, Mrs. Bumpus. I know. I mean, he's just saying, Mrs. Hilton, right. He doesn't have to ask for it, but to alleviate whatever his concerns were, we gave him immunity. He didn't have to ask for it. So he didn't even ask for immunity. They just gave him immunity. So I wonder why. They just offer you immunity like that? Is that normal?
And then I don't think he really understands what that immunity is.
I agree. I don't think he does either. I don't think he does either. Okay, let me see. Okay, but we gave it. He doesn't have to ask for it, Mrs. Bumpus. I know. I mean, he's just saying, Mrs. Hilton, right? He doesn't have to ask for it, but to alleviate whatever his concerns were, we gave him immunity. He didn't have to ask for it, Mrs. Bumpus. So if he wouldn't have had this, I'm just saying this so he can understand it. I'm walking him through. Mrs. Hilton, Mrs. Bumpus, would he still have had to testify? Or see, so I think that's where the problem is. Them giving him immunity, is that a conflict of him pleading the fifth? Because it seemed like that's what the conflict is.
The conflict is pleading the fifth because according to the order, he has to testify. Mm-hmm. So that means that you cannot plead the fifth.
But if they wouldn't have, but they gave him their own voluntary immunity. If he didn't have immunity, mm-hmm. he still couldn't have pled the fifth, even if he didn't have the immunity?
Yeah.
Okay.
He can plead the fifth if he didn't have the immunity.
If he did not?
Yes.
See?
Because the immunity protects him from anything that he says.
And that's why
anything in his testimony is protected.
And that's the problem. That's the issue right there. The issue is he should not have had the immunity. They gave it to him on purpose to force him to testify. Mm-hmm. That's why they gave him the immunity. He didn't ask for immunity. They gave him the immunity.
And then they placed the order on him.
And they placed the order on him to force him to testify. So that's messed up. So they tied his hands behind his back by throwing that immunity to him. But let me ask you this question about the immunity. Wouldn't you have to sign off to accept the immunity, or do you just get it and you don't need no signature?
I thought it all had to be on paper.
So even if it's on paper, do he have to sign to accept the immunity?
I thought so.
That's what I'm saying. See, I wonder, did he?
Making me question everything.
Yeah, because now we can see the corruption. Now we can see Woody may have opened the can of worms to this trial's beginnings, but him wanting to plead the fifth would have prevented him from testifying anything or allowing them to even bring any of the information and evidence that the state had on his testimonies that he had in the investigation room. They couldn't present that until he actually took stand. They set him up.
Yeah.
That's messed up.
And they keep setting him up.
He set up. So our yesterday's live, as funny as it was, towards the end with this new discovered information, just goes to show you that, yeah, he probably did go in there and say all the stuff that he said and open up the can of worms, but he did not. It's one thing to go in there and give an investigative statement, but it's another when you are coming on the stand and you're openly and willingly testifying. But see, he was not openly and willingly testifying. So while it looks like he snitched, yeah, but in order to make the snitch stand, he would have to testify. And by him wanting to plead the fifth, he did not want to push forward with what he attempted to start, what he started, I should say, in the beginning when he went in there and gave numerous statements. He didn't want to follow up with that. And he had every right to do that too. They forced that immunity on him.
That was his statement. That's his statement said, I've been a liar all my life.
Yeah.
So he's still trying to do it further.
Yeah, he's still cleaning it up and not cooperating with them. But the only part is unfortunate about him doing that is now they're going to bring in the exhibits of the interrogation rooms. The doors open for the interrogations to come in, and that's what shouldn't have never ever been seen by the public or the courts or nobody. Because had he got a chance to just plead the fifth, as he attempted to do, then he should have stayed in there. Unfortunately, and I know he didn't want to be in jail, but he should have stayed in there until they figured it out, because they forced him to come on the stand and say anything he wanted to say, and they didn't care what he said because they got his original statement in the interrogation room, and that's what they used against him. And that's why the streets is looking at him all sorts of crazy. But if you think about it, yeah, he got the can of worms open, but he was not trying to seal the deal by testifying. He wanted to withdraw everything he said in the interrogation room by pleading the fifth, which they would not let him do. They used their dirty tactics, and now he's been exposed. It's hella scandalous.
Yep, and so now they're going to be able to play the video and audio.
And they have been playing it.
Of the interrogation.
And they have been doing just that. That's dirty. But see, it's like it's an unfortunate situation, because he went in there and voluntarily on his own back in 2015 in fear of some retaliation for the unaliving of Peanut, aka Mr. Thomas. And they were saying it was him. He knew it wasn't, but he did not only tell on everybody, he also told on himself too. So it wasn't like he just went in there and said, "Oh, I'm innocent. I'm clean in all of this. I didn't do no wrong. Look at these people. Look at these people." He said, "No, this is my involvement. This is what I did." They're going to give him immunity for that, but this is what they did, and that's why we are here today. But in sight of all of that, they forced his hand in this matter, and I feel like his lawyer should have never took off like that at that moment. And even him, the lawyer, leaving his client out to dry like that, he thought maybe they would probably delay the case. They wasn't fit to delay this case another second, because this case is going on too long. It's going to continue to go on too long, and it's just not going to happen. So I don't know. What do you think is going to happen with the fact that they forced that immunity on him? He went in there and said, grown, I don't know, I lied about everything, I said anything just to get out of jail. He's just whatever. It's a messed up situation. Oof, it's a messed up situation.
This is what I think. Since he's saying that he didn't ask for that immunity, they can drop it. Then that really puts them in danger.
They have to let it go. They have to drop it, because he's emphasizing, and they're acknowledging he didn't ask for this immunity. We gave this to him.
So in a way, that doesn't. He can still stay up there as a potential witness, since he came in there voluntarily. That immunity is no longer going to protect him, and if they show that he was involved, or he said that he was involved, because all the information that he gave or any of that, he can go to jail for all of that as well and get RICO charges.
Yeah. They either way it go, they set him up, and in the end, he's free right now, but that's just for how long?
It depends on how long that immunity stands. Yeah.
Let's finish this out.
You better be quiet about that. Talking about I didn't ask for it. You better be thankful.
Yeah, he didn't. He should be thankful, because he really didn't ask for it. They enforced it on him, and they knew by enforcing that immunity on him, although he didn't ask for it, that was going to open up a whole can of worms. And they were just telling him, yeah, you just go out there. You can say anything you want to say. It don't matter what you say. Just go out there and say something. Like, that's manipulative, and that's misleading him, and that's wrong, because not knowing that him going out there just satisfying them, even though it wasn't what they wanted, it's still they got what they wanted, because they got him to testify just so that they can open up that Pandora's box of the investigation statements that he was given when he was given them. And those was what's being played.
But then on the flip side of it, if he doesn't have the immunity, then the order is invalid. And he can't plead the fifth.
He would have been able to plead the fifth. He would have been able to plead the fifth without the immunity. You can't plead it with an immunity. So, and again, my question would be, when they gave him this immunity and assured him nothing he said on that stand was going to go against him in any state or federal prosecution, that's what the immunity was for. But it still put him in a compromising situation because it messed him up. They screwed him. And they did that intentionally because they know he's throwing their case, and they need that interrogation video to come in there because, like I said, it goes to show you everything he said on the stand today, and they're going to use that in closing statements that everything he said on the stand was not accurate. But this is truthful because he came in there voluntarily, gave this information, and not only did he come in there voluntarily and give this information, but this information was corroborated by our investigation.
Yeah. So he was damned if he did. With the investigation.
Yeah.
So it looks like what he was saying was true. If they, it's a fact. Yeah.
Yeah. So he was damned if he did, and he was damned if he didn't. So he was in a terrible situation.
The first thing that could have happened was he should have stayed at home.
Yeah. And if he is watching, for whatever mysterious, miraculous reason, stop social media. Just let this die down. You gotta give it some time. If you go on social media just like this, Woody. Do that. You see me?
It's not wrong.
Now you see me, and now you don't, right? So that's what you're gonna have to do. You're gonna have to do it off the scene. Don't show yourself because you don't need for one people to see your background. Just really agree. Just log off. Just let it go because honestly it's really just not worth it. It really isn't.
It's not, and it's really hurting him.
It is.
Stop trying to get information. Stop talking about the case. Mm-hmm. Stop talking about it.
Yeah.
Just log off and lay low.
Basically, till this whole case blows completely over. And I know you want to be outside and you want to enjoy the summer. This ain't your summer. This ain't your season.
You better look out the window, son. Look out the window.
Exactly. This is not your season. Okay? This is the time where this is it's too hot. Your name is ringing too much. You just need to lay low, chill out, enjoy your family time. If you make any outside appearances, nobody should know you're outside. You don't need to go social media showing everybody look, you know what I'm saying? I get, you feeling yourself and all that, but that's not in your best interest. And if you want to do it's in your best interest, to me, it's in your best interest to play, what is it, hooky with them? Play possum with them? Yeah. Okay? Just don't come up. Just stay low.
Silent move.
Yeah, move in silence. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
DoorDash, Verbal Eat, Instacart, everything.
Yeah.
You don't need to go out.
No. Have somebody go pick your food up if you hella want something so bad. Have them go get it. And even if you do move around and go get it yourself, nobody needs to know what your moves are. You don't have to let people know you're having your great weekend because your parole officer allowed you to go to Miami. Just move in silence. Just stay low. Just lay low.
He's on live right now?
Somebody said he's live. I wonder where he's live at, on IG? Because I didn't get a notification. He's not live on IG. Let's see, is it on TikTok live? Because I did just get some notifications. It may be TikTok. Wow. Thank you, the only whip. Let me see it.
About the whole controversy thing about 50 men and women.
Let's see. Is he live? No, he probably was. He's not right now. Unless he's on YouTube live. Where is he live at? Because he's not live on none of the platforms. Because I got notifications in. Let me see. Did I get anything? I don't got no notifications that he's live. He just be posting stuff. Let's see. Nothing. All right, let's get back into the radio. Let's finish this out. Mrs. Hilton, Mrs. Bumpus, would he still have to testify or would he have been able to plead the fifth? That's what he's saying. Mrs. Hilton, if he did not have immunity, yes. Okay, my bad. I meant he goes live. Okay, thank you. Again, we just said that. Had he not had immunity, he would have been able to plead the fifth. They threw that immunity on him without his asking. Now, I just need to know, did he sign off on it or he don't need to sign it? They just give it to you regardless. So, Mrs. Hilton says, yes. Y'all done? How much TV? Okay. Get a remote control, any one you want. There's one in the other room, right? Downstairs in the living room or where? In the other room. Downstairs room? Yeah. Yeah. You gonna hang in there? Yeah. Go ahead. Take you a nap or something. Put your feet up. Kick your feet back. You chilling with your cousin. With your favorite cousin. Here's the remote control. No, I don't got it. It's downstairs. My bad. All right, Mrs. Bumpus. So would he? So wait. I'm sorry. Your volume went down. Hold on. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Queen.
I was just thinking that since he got immunity, he was considered a material witness. So that's the reason why they probably gave him immunity to make sure.
They would not even let him reject. Yeah, they wouldn't. And the people in the chat, like the only whip said, they wouldn't even let him even reject the immunity, and they wasn't gonna let him reject it. And the reason being is because he brought this information to the forefront that sparked their investigation, that created this RICO and all those arrests, and not only him. But he was a key player, but there was others involved as well. So other people was going to do the same thing he's doing. He's not the only one, y'all. I know he's highlighted because, it's around his testimonial time. And that's why everybody's looking at him right now. This too shall pass, okay? I'm a believer of, redemption. I know God and I know what he can do, okay? So, and he's showing that he is trying to turn that new leaf. But so I do have to retract some of my thoughts from last night's live because of all this stuff of what we were discovering today. So, okay, so let's see. So, yeah, he wouldn't have been able. So, yes, he could plead the fifth had he not had immunity. And Mr. Copeland said, that's what and then Mrs. Bumper said, that's what he's trying to say, okay? He's trying to say he did not ask for this. And Mrs. Hilton said, but he does not have to ask for it. So now they're clarifying it for us. Now that we have given it to him, because that's on him. So them locking him up, he got locked up because he had the immunity before he pled the fifth. They knew what they was doing. This was a strategic move on their part. But this is exposure though. And unfortunately, I can't say it's illegal due to the fact that, hold on, I got to get this, my daughter, maybe emergency. Hold on. Hello? 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 What, baby? I'm on live. Hurry up. Good 2 seconds. Hurry up now. What? What? I can't text you back, so you better hurry up and ask me, baby, because I'm busy. How much you trying to add on your card, Kanaya? Go ahead. Bye-bye. Golly. Calling me in the middle of the moment, knowing I'm going to say yeah. Okay? Just rude. Just straight up rude. Okay, let me get my my co-host back on the line. I can't do it without ya. All right, so let's get her back on the line and I'll continue with the reading. Okay, co-host, call back if you can. Let's continue. So basically trying to say he didn't ask for this, right? So Mrs. Hilton, but he does not have to ask for it. Now that we have given it to him, because that's on us. So now that we have given it to him, it's in order. Okay? He can still choose if this is the road he wants to take, then he'll just stay in custody. So they threw the immunity on him to force his hand in testifying. even though he did not want to testify, and he didn't really testify, but it didn't matter if he did or if he didn't. They needed him to do that so he could go, so they could open up the door to presenting the testimonies that they gotten from him through the through the interrogation of the involuntarily. All right, you back, Queen. Let me before I finish some of this read. I want to read the comments because we're getting a lot of comments, and I want to acknowledge the people that's in the chat and what they're saying. I don't want to get too far ahead, so thank you, Karen. Shout out to you for being in the building. We got Sheila Delaney. She said, "Hey, next, good to watch your live. I usually catches your lives late, but I'm in the building. Your day one. Bring it next. Thank you, Queen. And I see you here, Spicy. Shout out to Spicy Girl. Shout out to Black Butterfly. Say, hey, Hollywood here and listening. You're doing a great job on the case. Thank you. Let me see. So she says, disagree. Melnick had a vacation already planned. His advice was for Woody not to testify because that immunity would not cover Woody with the feds. The state lied. Okay. Oh, okay. See, I didn't know that. But they just emphasized that, he would be clear for both state and federal. But I don't know because I don't see the paperwork. What's up about, okay, we're not talking about that. So I don't know why you're bringing that over here. Black Beauty says, next, another thing is Bumpus and Melnick did not want to represent Wody. If he was going to lie, they said if it was proven that they knew he would lie, bar violation on ethics, they say. Okay, that makes some sense for me. And then it says safety. Yes, because the truth will set it off against him. For almost 10 years, he thought he was safe. He trying to tell him he lied, but that hurts their case. Yeah, it does. This is why Melnick and Bumpus wants no parts. He admits he lied, which makes absolutely sense, okay? The state is screwed because if he hops on stand and tell them he's been lying, they can't jail him because he has immunity. Ooh, okay, that's true. Okay, we seen it. We seen after attorney still suggested he wanted the information and the ex parte meeting. Judge Glanville flipped the script. One thing for sure, Wody is free riding around buying hamburgers. Yeah, he definitely free. See how the had to meet him in their car. That's why I don't think he's under witness protection. He tried to refuse to subpoena too. He's not under witness protection because if he was, and that's a part of the stipulations when they was asking him about whatever concerns he had. If he would have said he had safety concerns, they was willing to put him in witness protection program, give him a new identity, put him somewhere where he would be safe and out of harm's way from any of these people of any type of retaliation. You would have never see him again. So he would have had to say goodbye to a lot of people. He didn't want to leave his children behind. He didn't want to leave his family behind. He wants to bring them with him. And that too, is also another issue because at the end of the day, it would have been for him and not unless they would have put something together and they could have took everybody up out of there. And I don't know how likely that was going to be. So next, they gave immunity because without his testimony, they can't bring his videos and jail calls into evidence. Exactly. That's why they gave that to him. So they gave him immunity just so whatever he say, he will have to go out there and testify, even if he say 12 plus 12 is 2, and we know it's 24, and then he can just say whatever he want to say. you're fired. You know, like I said, all the stuff, the taxes that we saw, he was able and capable to doing that because under the immunity, they can't prosecute him for any of that stuff. But they didn't care about whatever he said on the stand. They just needed him to get on the stand and say whatever he wanted to say so they could pull out those evidence, those recorded calls, and those interrogated videos that he had. They don't want him to plead the fifth because they need the tapes to come into evidence, and that's why they forced him to testify. That makes all the sense. It was a judge order, so he did not have to sign it. Oh, see, and that's a good knowledge to know. Thank you. When he told he excluded himself from that, Woody would. Okay, so wow, that is messed up, though. It is messed up. Okay, they would not let Woody reject his immunity. He said he was a liar too. I know if I was on that jury, I would be wondering what the heck is going on. I just cooked myself some cheese, bro. I just cooked myself some cheese, bro. You funny for that one. All right, let's get back into this. So, Mrs. Hill, he doesn't have to ask for it now that we have given it to him because that's on us. So now that we have given it to him, it's in order. He can still choose if this is the road he wants to take, then he'll just stay in custody until the trial is over. Then they would have let him go, and then he would have not. Then I don't know if he would have had to stay in jail until this trial was over under the immunity deal. Then they would have freed him, and he still would not have testified. So he didn't want to sit in there till this was over. So he just went out there, did any old thing, and then not realizing what he did still opened that door for them to bring in that evidence. And that's all they wanted to do anyway, was bring in the recorded statement so they could show he's lying right now, but he was telling the truth back then. He'll just stay in custody until the trial is over. And when we say the trial is over, every last defendant has been tried. Not just these 6, the other ones too. Oh, see, he wasn't to sit in there for that. So they was gonna make him stay while they did Young Thug's trial and the other people trial. So he was gonna be stuck until then. And that's cause we don't know how long. And they talk about this might take 2, 3, 4 years. So that's crazy. All right, so then let me see. So Mr. Copeland said, I did longer time. Mrs. Hilton said, all right, Mr. Copeland, I'm telling you that you are literally immune from prosecution from anything else you may say. That's that. So the choice is always up to you. But we wanted to put on the record the state does not want you in custody. What the state would like you to do is purge yourself from. Mr. Copeland says, what purge yourself mean? Mrs. Hilton says, meaning that you are no longer in custody, and the way that you purge yourself is to testify. That is kind of how it happens, and that is what the state wants you to do. We don't want you in custody. I can't say that any other different way, but we don't want you in custody. The only thing that's holding you is you refusing to testify. So this is going to be problematic for all the other people who's on this witness stand, who's going to come up there and try to do what he did if they got immunity. Now, if they don't got immunity, they can plead the fifth, they good. But if they don't, they're going to have to purge themselves as well. All right, let's see. So you don't have, okay, so the court. So you don't have any questions and any other questions. Basically, if you revoke your fifth, is that where we are? Okay. So basically, if you invoke the fifth, Mr. Copeland, I don't trust what's going on. I don't trust nobody. I trust her word, but I don't know what's going on, Your Honor. Mrs. Hilton, this is your insurance. And see, insurance is different from insurance, like assurance. Assurance is a for sure thing. Insurance is just insurance, like you insure your vehicle. I don't know if you want to break that down to him, Mrs. Bump, as well. He doesn't want that, the court, but he's been given it. See, that's the challenge, Mr. Copeland, is that if they didn't give you the immunity, you could invoke your Fifth Amendment privilege. But what the state decided is they said your testimony is worth more to them at this point in time, and they really want to know what you have to say. So they have made from the state's perspective, They have made a decision to give you immunity so you no longer can invoke your Fifth Amendment privilege. You have to testify. So that's the difference in this particular scenario, is that they have taken away. Well, you can still invoke your Fifth Amendment privilege. You still can do that, but the consequence of invoking it is you will just remain in custody. So if you testify, you get out of custody and you stay out of custody until you are done, Mr. Copeland. And then if I don't testify, I have to stay in there when the court, until the trial is over, until all the defendants have been. I've got these 6 that we have right now, and then there's another 6. Mrs. Hilton, no, there's another 12. The court, there's another 12 or thereabout that's are still outstanding in various forms or another. Mr. Copeland, can I speak with her for a second? The court, yeah, sure. Judge Glanville, Assistant District Attorney Simone Hilton, Court Reporter Kristen Reaver, and Investigator Antonio Long. Rashid Hamilton left the chambers at 10:17 in the morning and returned at 10:33 in the morning. Mr. Copeland, my question is, I can ask you a question. The court, yes, Mr. Copeland. So my question is, so what I was just asking her was, if you ask me a question, you feel as in I was lying about it, you will lock me up. You will lock me back up, Mrs. Hill. No. If you, so you are saying, you say, I didn't talk to Demikion. Well, no, I can't talk about that because the judge is in here. You are asking for an example. If you said before that the sky was blue and I asked you on the stand what color is the sky and you say, I said it was red, I'm going to say no back before you said it was blue. Is that what you are trying to ask me? Mrs. Bumpus, So explain the independent evidence. If he says he did something, and you know he's not telling the truth, what happens, Mrs. Hilton? If he said he did something and he did not do that, Mrs. Bumpus, if you believe he did not, so if you believe that he's lying about that, Mrs. Hilton, then no. If he admits to doing something on the stand, Mrs. Bumpus, Mrs. Hilton, and he did not do that thing, Mrs. Bumpus, Mrs. Hilton, I'm going to say, is this the first time you are saying that, Mrs. Bumpus, and you have independent evidence to prove it wasn't him? Then what, Mrs. Hilton? Then nothing. What do you mean? Like, Mrs. Bumpus, so then he will be fine? Mrs. Hilton, yes. But, Mrs. Bumpus, so you are okay with him if he got on the stand and said things that were not true? Mrs. Hilton, no. I want him to tell the truth. What have I always said to you? I want you to tell the truth. I don't know what's going to come out your mouth. I expect you to tell the truth. If you say something that is inconsistent with what you said before, then I'm going to ask about the inconsistency. But I expect you to tell the truth. What you go on the stand and do, I don't know. I don't know what you're going to do. I want you to tell the truth, but I will deal with you not you saying something different in the matter that I normally do. Mr. Copeland, if I'm saying something different, right? So when the police question me, they didn't question me every time they locked me up. I don't know how many times that was. I done told them whatever different story I could think of to try to finesse my way out of the situation. I don't recall what I done told them. Mrs. Hilton, okay, so you can say, I don't recall. That is how that works. I don't recall, Mrs. Bumpus. And he can say that to every single question, Mrs. Hilton. I would hope that that is not the truth, because I would think there are some things you do recall and some things you don't. But the things you don't recall, you don't recall. And then I will go through my process of what I do. You can talk to them. You can talk to him about what impeachment is. That won't get you locked up. Impeachment will not get you locked up. You can talk to him about what impeachment is. If he says, I don't recall, Mr. Copeland, what will get me locked up? Mrs. Hilton, what did I tell you? Mr. Copeland, I don't know. Mrs. Hilton, what you did on Friday, I pled the fifth. If the court instructs you, Mr. Copeland, so in the So the only thing that gets me locked up is pleading the fifth. Mrs. Bumpus, yes. Mrs. Hilton, the court instructs you. You need to answer the questions. You say again, I plead the fifth again, that's what's going to get you locked up. But if you answer the question, that would not get you locked up, Mr. Copeland. So if you don't want me in jail, why you just don't let me go after the trial over with? Mrs. Hilton, you are in jail because you are not answering the questions. The court, because you have been given immunity. Mrs. Hilton, because you have been given immunity, you are only in jail because you got up here. Mr. Copeland, well, what about this? I answer the questions. You take away immunity, I answer the questions, and I plead the fifth. Mrs. Hilton, no. Mr. Copeland, two questions that I feel incriminate me. Mrs. Hilton, but then that's Mr. Copeland. I won't plead the fifth to things that don't incriminate me. The court, the state can still give you immunity. They can give immunity to whoever they want, okay? And they can make that choice. I don't even make that choice. So if they, like I said earlier, they want your testimony. They figure it's that the jury needs to hear what you have to say, good, bad, or indifferent. And what Mrs. Hilton is telling you is just tell the truth as you know it and let her worry about. I mean, even though you may have a set different versions of whatever, that's for impeachment. That's not going to get you in trouble. What will get you in trouble is you just invoking your Fifth Amendment privilege because you have been given immunity. Or as Mrs. Love said this morning, remember? Mrs. Love said, if you overtly lie about something, like if you tell a bold-faced lie, a bold-faced whopper, then they can indict you on that particular charge. I mean, that particular false statement. Did you want to take it from there so I can go get the baby? She done ran off. Are you there?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
So
was on mute.
okay, it's okay. So we're at page 65 at the top of Mr. Copeland's testimony that says that's what they're going to do. And I'll be right back. I will get the baby.
Okay. Mr. Copeland, that's what they're going to do. His mother. That is what I was saying. You will be right back here, Miss Hilton. But if you say something that you know you did not do, like you admit to something you know you did not do, whether you, Mr. Copeland, like murder, don't have like no statute of limitations, right? But if you didn't do it, I can't charge you with something you didn't do because I don't have any other evidence but you saying it, Mr. Copeland. But y'all don't, like Miss Bumpus. You can charge him with false statements and he will be back in jail. That is what I'm trying to say, Miss Hilton. But if I know that you are lying about that, I do not intend to do that. If I know right now he's lying, I know he's lying. I am not going to charge you because I don't know your reason for doing that. But I'm not going to charge you when I know you didn't do what you are trying to say you did now. And that can be part of this. I know you didn't do it, Mr. Copeland. But it's up to the judge to do that. Ms. Hilton, no. It's up to the state to bring charges. The court. I didn't have anything to do with that. Oh, I don't have anything to do with that. Ms. Hilton, he has nothing to do with bringing charges. That's up to the state of Georgia. Mr. Copeland, can I talk to my family and I will make my decision right after I hang up with the phone. Miss Bumpus, he's saying he hasn't been able to speak to anybody. Miss Hilton, his sister just called us. See, Mr. Copeland, y'all done me wrong. Y'all just hold me in the jail. Don't let me get no PIN number, no nothing. Miss Hilton, we have no knowledge. We do not know that you, Miss Bumpus. He hasn't been able to do anything, speak to anyone. Mr. Copeland, the jail system's down, but y'all still putting people in. Miss Hilton, that part I don't know. I know we have been in communication with your sister. Your sister actually texted Miss Lansaquit to make sure you were okay. We told her we physically had laid eyes on you. I'll leave that up to the sheriff. I don't know. Mr. Copeland, so you think that what she's saying, Ms. Hilton, I can tell you right now, Mr. Copeland, I'm talking about that locking me back up. Ms. Hilton, we'll have to bring charges. Those, there will be no incentive. Mr. Copeland, y'all will. Ms. Hilton, we already had this discussion, Mr. Copeland. Look what you did to me. You waited until Friday and you did this. I told you every day before Friday came that I was pleading the fifth, Ms. Hilton. No, you did not. As a matter of fact, our last report, Mr. Copeland, let's see if you can get beyond this, okay? Beyond your concern is you could have invoked the Fifth Amendment privilege. The state could have turned around and said, stop. Had me go ahead and file that motion and giving you immunity. It was going to, they make that decision. They decided to make it on Friday.
What page you on?
Even if you would have, 67.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So even if you would have been more comfortable testifying and invoking your Fifth Amendment privilege, that could decide you as a witness. They want your testimony more than they do you invoking your Fifth Amendment privilege. So they gave you immunity. They gave you immunity, so you got to testify truthfully as to what your knowledge of the particular incident is.
Keep going.
They could have done that anyway. Even if they put you on the stand, they could have said stop and gone ahead and given you immunity. They could have done that, Mr. Copeland. So can I get it in some type of writing that if I was to testify, that if she feels as in I lied about anything, they won't lock me back up? The court, let me have that, Ms. Bumpus. So Ms. Bumpus hands the document to the court. The court, Mr. Copeland, on page 2 of the order pursuant to OCGA 24-5-507. However, no testimony given by Kenneth Copeland as required under this order or any information directly or indirectly derived from the testimony of Kenneth Copeland given by Kenneth Copeland as required under this order shall be used against said Kenneth Copeland in any proceeding or prosecution for a crime or offense concerning which he testifies under the order. Okay, so if you testify about some aggravated assault or murder, they can't prosecute you on it because that is what it says on the order. Okay? The only thing that will get you in trouble is this next little paragraph. Kenneth Copeland shall be subject to prosecution or to penalty or forfeiture for any perjury, false swearing, or contempt committed in testifying or failing to testify in accordance with this order. However, it is ordered that Kenneth Copeland shall not be required to produce evidence that can be used in any other court in the state, the United States, or any other state. So basically, you commit perjury, false swearing, or contempt committed in testifying. That means if you just invoke your Fifth Amendment privilege or failing to testify, you say, I am not going to testify. All right. So the only two real things you can do, you can kind of get in trouble for are perjury and false swearing, as long as you tell the truth. Now, as Ms. Hilton and Ms. Bumpus said earlier, you may have told or been asked about situations over and over again. They may have changed. What the state is asking you to do is tell the version that really is the truth. If they want to impeach you, they can do that. Or if the other side wants to impeach you, they can do that. You won't get in trouble for that. Mr. Copeland, you said I will. The court, you will not. You will not. Impeachment is not perjury or false swearing, okay? Mr. Copeland. But she said I can purge myself, though. Ms. Hilton, no. We're saying two different things. Sorry. Perjury is if you get on the stand and you say just a bold-faced lie, you just something that is just wrong. You say, I did something, and all the other times you said, I have not done it. And really, while it's perjury, it's really just an inconsistent statement. Like, if you get on the stand and say, I did X, but in 2015 you said, I never did X, that is what I'm going to impeach. Mm-hmm.
Keep going, I'll hear you.
Oh, okay. You're talking to me?
No, they yelling for me, girl. I'm going to impeach you on... We're having a party. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to impeach you on everything you said in 2015, meaning I'm going to say, okay, today you said I did X, but in 2015, Lieutenant Dean entered chambers. Lieutenant Dean, we have a security issue. We need to stop for a minute. If we can stop for a second, please. Wow, what's happening? Judge Glanville and Lieutenant Dan exit chambers at 10:45 a.m. Judge Glanville returned to the chambers at 10:47. Ms. Hilton, I don't know what was told to you on Friday. I have no reason to want you in prison. You have spent enough time in prison for YSL, period. So why would I want for that for
you?
Was
being sarcastic.
That doesn't make no sense. I said it to you before, and I will say it to you again in front of all these people. It makes no sense. Mr. Copeland, you just said I'm going to have to stay in jail until the last. You know what? I want to hit him. Okay.
Because he don't get it.
If you don't testify, get this part through your head. If you don't testify, that is the only thing that is holding you. That is literally the only thing holding you right now is the fact that you keep saying, I'm not going to testify. Well, you haven't said it today. I'm not testifying. I plead the fifth. If you get up there and I want to tell you the truth, like I said before. If you don't recall certain things, you can say, don't recall. That's fine. I want you to tell the truth. I don't expect you to remember every single thing, every single detail from 2015. I just don't. No one here does. But what I expect for you to do is to answer questions so we can get through this. So you can go home with your baby for her birthday, see these dogs deliver their babies, go talk to your nephews, and do all these other things, Mr. Copeland. How do you know about my dogs? Because you told me, Mr. Copeland. Okay. Ms. Bumpers, what's wrong?
He's
Mr. Copeland, I'm stressing at another level, like, Ms. Bumpers. I mean, can't he? I'm saying, Mr. Copeland, I'm weak. Man, I'm not playing. I'm dead serious, man. Like, Ms. Hilton, this is what your position is. We do not want him in custody. We want him to tell the truth. We want him to testify. That's what will get him out of jail. And, you have to make Ms. Bumpers. If he decides in 2 weeks he wants to testify, then what? Ms. Hilton, if he wants to stay in jail for 2 weeks, then I don't know why you would want to stay in jail for 2 weeks. I have no idea. Ms. Bumpers, he just feels like he's under a lot of pressure right now, this second. Mr. Copeland, even at the jail, they are just, you can't give me a house arrest. No, you can go home by taking a stand and testifying. That's what the court, and come back tomorrow. Ms. Hilton, we keep on saying yes, but there is no crime. We keep on saying yes. I don't know who is telling you about a crime. There is no crime. You've done nothing wrong except for not, Mr. Copeland. So why am I in jail then, Ms. Hilton? Because you aren't testifying, Mr. Copeland. But that ain't nothing wrong.
He really stupid.
It's not a crime. It's not a crime, but you're in civil contempt. The court, two things. Because you invoked your privilege after you have been given immunity, that is why you're in custody. Because you get out by testifying. So you testify, you get out. That's why I was going to bring you. Why I brought you here early today to just inquire about that. You can remain and hold your position of invoking the fifth or not testifying, but you can go back to prison. You can go back to jail because you can't sentence me. No. Okay, Miss Bumpus, there's no sentence. The court, there is no sentence. The contempt is compliance. They want your testimony. That is all they want, whatever that may be. Because I don't know what it is. Your Honor, oh Lord, Hilton. So listen, you're in jail for failing to testify. For failing to testify. Ms. Hilton, not for nothing else. There is no crime. You haven't done nothing. I don't know if people are telling you that we are going to charge you with nothing. We are not charging you. The state charges you. There is nothing we're charging you with. You're only in custody because you have decided not to testify. That is it. Once you decide to testify, remember that word you were talking about, purge, Mr. Copeland? The court, okay. You can purge right now. Purge, get yourself out of jail just by testifying. I can purge and get out of jail? Yes, just by testifying. Ms. Hilton, not perjury. The court, purge meaning you get out of jail. You can get out of jail, out of custody, just by testifying. Mr. Copeland, and what about the other one? The other word, perjury. The court, that's different. Ms. Hilton, that's different. The court, that's a different word, okay? Mr. Copeland, that can get me back in jail? Yes, Ms. Hilton. The court, perjury is. Ms. Hilton, it's not, what you're saying is not perjury. What you're saying is what we call a prior inconsistent statement. Your example that you gave me, what if I said I did something and I know you didn't do it, and you said before you didn't do it, that's not perjury. That is a prior inconsistent statement. Ms. Bumpy, you got to make a decision. So if he starts testifying today, he's going to go home today. He's going to go home today? Ms. Hilton, he should so long as he remains. But if you get up there and be like, if you get to testify and then we get into it and you start saying, I plead the fifth, we're going to be back here again, Ms. Bumpus. But if he says he don't recall to everything, he'll be okay. Ms. Hilton, I'm not advising that, but as long as he answers the questions, that's fine. So long as he, Mr. Copeland, I did these crimes. I'm telling you that.
He's a fool. Girl, what we gonna do with this kid?
Miss Hilton, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, but Miss Muppet, I think. Are you saying you want to get up there on the stand and say something? Mr. Copeland, no response. Miss Muppet, did we find out if he could talk to his family? No, Miss Hilton. I mean, if it's okay, we got this sister's number. Mr. Copeland, as my attorney, you gotta, Miss Hilton, if y'all want to talk, let me go somewhere where I can't hear you. The judge is over there, so just speak low so she doesn't hear you. The court, hold on. Judge Glanville handed a document to Attorney Kayla Bumpus and exited chambers with Assistant District Attorney Simone Hilton, Investigator Long, Investigator Hamilton, and Court Reporter Christina Weber from 10:53 a.m. to 11:28 a.m. The court. Okay, all right. Mr. Copeland, have you had an opportunity to talk with Ms. Bumpus, your lawyer, and Ms. Hilton, the state's counsel? Have you got any other questions? Mr. Copeland, no, Your Honor. The court, is it your desire to give testimony today? Mr. Copeland, yes, sir. The court, okay, all right then. Do y'all have some clothes for him? Ms. Hilton, I don't know. Let me go take a look. What size are you? Mr. Copeland, I can't hear you. Ms. Hilton, what size are you? Mr. Copeland, little. Okay. I'm sorry. Okay.
He really talked like that, huh? So he's not acting?
I guess not. Oh what is little?
God. Little, my God. He's a clown.
Okay. Investigator Hamilton. We had a large jacket for him on Friday. Large. Miss Hilton, you had a jacket for him? Investigator Hamilton, yes. Miss Hilton, oh, but he can't wear a large. The court, what is your waist size? 34? Mr. Copeland, 32. The court, yes. What are you, a 34? 34 to 36 chest? Miss Hilton, probably 36. Mr. Copeland, not in my chest. What do you mean?
The court. Size.
The court. Size. Size. Mr. Hilton, what size are you? Small or medium? Mr. Copeland, small or medium?
Oh my God!
Lord, please forgive me. I'm trying to make it in, y'all. I'm going to hell.
Girl.
Okay. I'll try not to get ahead.
Oh my God.
Alrighty. The court. They are going to try to get you some clothes so you don't have to testify wearing that jail uniform, okay? Mr. Copeland, y'all don't want to show the people how y'all did me. Okay, the court, look. The court is getting up. Take your time. Okay, Miss Hilton, if we can't find clothes, then you may have to until tomorrow. Mr. Copeland, I prefer to go in like this. Miss Hilton, I don't understand what your preference is. Mr. Copeland, no, don't hide it.
Can you make it?
Can you make it put on clothes? Miss Hilton, no. Mr. Copeland, I want to go in there like this. Miss Hilton, fine with me. The court, all right, okay. Mr. Copeland, you ain't going to try and lock me back up for this. So as long as you testify, we will get in order to get you released. Today, Miss Bumper, today, the court, whose copy is this? Miss Hilton, you got to make sure you come back now. I want to be real clear. Mr. Cooper, where have I ever ran? Miss Hilton, you have not. That's the only thing you have not. The court, whose copy is this? Miss Hilton, that was ours. Do you want a copy? You can take it though. Miss Bumpers, okay. Miss Hilton, do you still have yours or you threw it away? Miss Bumpers, I'm going to give him both of these things so we can have some information. Miss Hilton, okay. The court reporter, are we off the record now? The court, we are done. Miss Bumpers, yes, I believe so. The court, okay, we're good. See everybody downstairs in about 10 minutes. The proceedings concluded at 11:31 a.m. Sure. Now, what's your sign, Hollywood?
Me, I'm a Virgo. Oh, my size or my sign?
Yeah, what's your size?
My size, small.
Small or medium?
Small, medium.
Size medium? I'm
little. I said, what the what? He really is like that. So he's not acting. I mean, to a degree, because when he went in there to get him the detail, what they got him on that tape, he spoke fluent English. But I don't know. It is, yeah. Maybe he was gearing himself up for the practice, like little, small, medium, whatever, That was funny.
I mean, let's get asked about his chest. He's talking about, in my chest?
That was funny. He really funny. So I'm gonna. Okay, so let me read this last little certificate. I guess it's just hereby certified that the foregoing transcript was taken down, as stated in the caption, and the colloquies, questions, and answers were reduced to typewriting under my directions that are the foregoing represented to correct the record of the evidence given. I further certify that in accordance with the OCGA 9-11-28A, I am not a relative, employee, attorney, or counsel of any party, nor am I financially interested in the actions. This is the first day of July, because I have a conclusion now. Yesterday, I mean, and it's still the same. It's only thing changed is that, like I said, in any situation dealing with the judicial system, anybody can go make a police report. Anybody can make a police, go in there and give a statement. They still have a diligence to do. So what they do is they go out, they investigate. If they can corroborate it, then they corroborate it, and then they move it along to the next until, it becomes a court proceeding. So he did still get everything started. That still stands. He just had a change of heart. He decided, he don't want to do this. He don't want the reputation. He don't want to be labeled a snitch. He don't want to be looked at as one. But he already, regardless of how people are going to proceed it, he's going to always be looked at that because he is the jump start of this entire situation. Now, I will say he did have a change of heart. He did not want to get on that stand and repeat everything that he said in that interrogation room. For one, this happened in 2015. It was the heat of the moment at that time. He was upset. He was fearful. So he went in there and he laid the pork and beans out and just spilled it all over the table. Now, 5 years later, or 7 years, or whatever years later, and it took this long, and he's been whatever, he don't want to participate, and that usually what happens, especially when cases are drawn out for years like this. Now, had they took this to trial in 2015 or even 2016, then maybe he would have probably still proceeded, because people was getting shot at, his family, his mama, you know what I'm saying? So he probably would have stood on business. But because all this time has passed and nothing's happened to him, and he's feeling, great or whatever, he don't want to do it. And they forced him to get out there just so that they could release the evidence that they already had, that he presented to them, that they was able to validate and corroborate. And so therefore, how you look at it, is he still a snitch in your eyes? Some would say yeah, and some may say, well, yeah, but no. Like myself, I would say yeah, but no, because the fact is he did not want to testify. And in order to make it stick, you have to get on that stand. And because the way their tactics was used in this immunity, they granted that to him. He didn't ask for it. It was given to him. And by them giving that to him, they forced his hand. They forced him to get out there and say anything he wanted to say, and it didn't matter because they were still going to pull up the evidence of what he brought in there in the interrogation room, and any recorded conversation, any text message, any evidence that they gathered that they was able to corroborate. They was going to open that door by him getting on there. That's why they immunity him. What would be your thoughts in this here?
I think the immunity was given to him under false pretense, because they told him that he's going to be protected. And so he thought that he was going to have to testify. And then by him, I don't know where he got that from about pleading a fifth. I don't know if somebody advised him about that, but because I can't say, since there was nothing recorded when he was advised by the counsel. So that's why they put that order on him. They were going to, either way, I think they were going to force him to corroborate his story from the interrogation room.
They was gonna get that regardless, yeah. Because he came in there, he gave this statement, and that they was gonna get it out of him one way or the other. Now
they were gonna make him do it, and I think that because they saw that they had a case. Maybe after the investigation, they thought that this information was gonna stick and go through with the RICO.
Right.
So either way, he was messed up from the get-go.
That was funny when he said, I want everybody to see what y'all did to me. He said he want to go in there with them clothes on. He didn't even want to change out of it. And that's why he came in there in that white thermal shirt, because that was a part of the jailhouse clothes. But see, it didn't look like it, because it's not like he was dressed in the orange gear or something like that, or whatever they colors that they use out there. The white just kind of blended, but yeah, maybe he might have had the jailhouse pants on. But yeah, he wanted them to see, he wanted the jury to know he got locked up after he said he pled the fifth. So that way the judge, not the judge, but the jury, he wanted them to see he was locked up after he pled the fifth, because they wasn't going to be aware of that. They wasn't privy to that. They had to leave the courtroom, so that they could say you're now going to, you are being held into contempt of court because, he didn't want to plead. So, yeah, the immunity was, he was. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No. Oh, I was just thinking, I was like, why did you say I did those things?
Yeah, he was acknowledging that he did some criminal stuff. But again, even in the report, it said that he told on himself and 5 YSL members and 28 additional members who are facing racketeering acts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he gave a lot of information. And then, like I said, when I went to go look at that opening statement, it was laid out that he got into an altercation with Mr. Thomas at a club. he was jumped. They jumped him at a club. So he had been pissed off for days. So now they're looking for Thomas, and then in the light of it, Thomas loses his life, and then they're blaming him because of the altercation. But he really wasn't the trigger person, and they know who the trigger person is. That person is also facing, these criminal matters as well. And for the people that's tuned in, I see you guys' comments. Thunder Drop said they was wrong for that. They all need to be investigated, and they tricked that man. Well, I think it's tricked to a degree, because at the end of the day, the immunity was forcing him to testify. And again, see, a lot of people feel he was tricked. I can't say he was tricked with an immunity, because he went in there to get him to testify. He gave them people a statement in the beginning of before this proceedings ever even came to court. He went in there the morning after Peanut or Thomas was unalived, and he went to the police station and he gave statements to them. Several of them. Not just that one day. He went a few days later. He went weeks later. He even went months later. A total of 9 times giving them statements. So, and you go in there and you give them these statements like he was given to them. This stuff is being recorded. So, but rather than use the recorded statement in court, they need him to testify. So if he's trying to back out of testifying with the pleading the fifth, he won't have the fifth to plead as an option, because they're going to put an immunity on him, which obviously they have every right to do so, because he is a creditable witness. He is material for them. He is their material witness. So that is important for the viewers to understand. Had he never went to the police station the morning after Thomas was unalive, and every time thereafter, telling them X, Y, and Z, and all the stuff that y'all hear in those recorded conversations and all the recorded jailhouse conversations, then you might have would have let me see. Okay, it's out. Good. I'll watch it. Thank you, Queen. You always keeping me updated. I love my girl. So, then he would not been immunity. He wouldn't have been an immunity. He would have been a part of this case. And maybe he could have been, but then they could have, when they get you, they would have gave him opportunity. Do you want to work with us or something like that? We'll give you this, we'll give you that. We'll do this and we'll do that. He rejected everything that they wanted to give to him. He didn't even want the damn immunity, but it wasn't a choice. He didn't have a choice, is what I want y'all to understand. He did not have a choice. He was gonna testify, even if he didn't repeat what was said in those recorded statements that he gave to them. They just still needed him to testify. So once he testifies, then they open up that door of here's what he said in the investigation room. Here's what he said on stand. Do you believe him now, or do you believe him then? And that's what it would have been about. And when they would have talked to the jury about that, because they need the jury to decide the fate based on his testimony. Without it, he would have walked. They all would have walked, because he would have pled the fifth, and they knew that. So that's how they have this is in play. This is good information, though, for you all that's tuning in, especially for the criminal minds who are always trying to get ahead. This is giving you knowledge on what not to do. Because if you find yourself in his situation, you will be purging yourself to testify. So don't go in there trying to play with the people, telling them what they want to hear and getting everybody locked up. And then when it come crunch time and it get real, when it's time to get on that stand, you don't want to do it. So, but don't think this is the first time they told him you will be called into court. So when he was bringing them statements to them, they was telling them, you will be called into court and you will be having to testify on the stand. They might not have mentioned to him back then that he was getting immunity, because he didn't want no protection. They was talking about, they had those conversations with him. They had to have those conversations with him, because his life is going to be in danger as it is. And they put that in the paperwork as well. They notated that, he's a marked man now. But we praying for his safety. That's the most important thing. We are praying for his safety. So I'll read a couple more comments, but that is my time. I didn't want to stay this long, but we got through it. Thank you to my co-host, because she's amazing. Let me see. He is a fool. Gotta love him. He is funny. I mean, a shout out to Woody, because to keep it 100 with him, knowing now today is a different day than yesterday's reporting, because I was getting all the information like, oh my God, you got this started. Like, it's new to me. So again, like I said, I'm coming in at the end, but yet the beginning, because I had to go back and research it all to come with my conclusion. I don't want to be all off topic. So now we're caught up. So when things happen this coming week, if they return, we'll be there to watch it live play out on television. It's streaming on Law and Crime and all the networks that's like major streams that are on social media. We'll follow those platforms. So basically, he messed his own self up. Yes, he messed himself up, because he went in there in 2015. He gave recorded statements, several of them, 9 to be exact, and they told him, "You're gonna have to testify. We'll take your statements, but he was willing to testify at that time. They should have did it that then, but trials take a while to put things together. By that time, some people have a change of heart, a change of mind, and that's exactly what happened to him. He had a change of heart, and he had a change of mind. He no longer wanted to do what he was angry at that time. He didn't know where it was coming from. All he knew is that people was threatening his life. His mama house was getting shot up, or they was getting shot at, and he was fearful for everybody. But now that all those people are off the street, it sounds like it's a safer place in Atlanta now, and like there's less crimes. So let me see any more questions. Let me see. But they gave him legal advice, and he still can be prosecuted federally. No, he cannot be prosecuted federal or statewide, based on that one, the immunity, right?
Right.
Yeah. They cannot. Doesn't it mean he is marked man by the YSL? That is why the defense should be in the meeting. Well, yeah, but no, because this had nothing to do with anything that they needed to be aware of. This had everything to, and that's why it's not going to work in their favor, because they did not. This is not a secret meeting. This is a meeting that took place with him, his lawyer, which is Bumpus, that stood in the gap for his absent lawyer, and the prosecutors and all the investigators that was in there, pertaining to him being held in contempt in court for pleading the fifth. That's all this was about. This had nothing to do with the case. It's about, you pled the fifth. We gave you immunity. You have to testify. He just didn't understand it. He needed representation in there to explain to him what's going to happen and what this immunity is, what it means for him. And that's all it was. And that's it. That's all. Yeah, it is in Steele's motion. Yeah, it is in his motion, because they are the ones who felt they should have been there. The Mr. Steele and the others felt entitled to be at anything that was pertaining to this creditable material, not credible, but this material witness. And because they wasn't there, they don't know if some tactics happened to force him to come out, because they was trying to stop him. Still did not want him to testify, because they don't want whatever he said in the interrogation room, or whatever conversations he had that was recorded through the jailhouse phone records and all that stuff, to come into and play, because it's going to damage Steele's case against his client, which he's representing, Jeffrey Williams, aka Young Thug. Right? You want to add to that, my queen, co-host?
Well, yes, I was reading the last comment, because they did explain how he cannot be prosecuted.
No, how he can be. They did tell us if he perjures himself. Remember, there are ways that he can be prosecuted. So it's up to him how he goes out there and he testifies. So he has to testify between a thin line. He can't just go out there throwing no Hail Marys and then thinking they not going to decide his fate in the end. But as of right now, all they needed for him to do was testify. So him testifying, they opened up that door to bring that investigated recorded statements up in there. That's what they wanted to do. And they got a chance to do exactly what they wanted to do, because they knew he was going to do this. And again, And even in her open statements that one of my subscribers had me go take a look at again, and she said some members are feeling some type of way. Some of them don't no longer want to testify. Some are embarrassed to testify, and some may be intimidated to testify. And she knew that that was going to happen, so she told that in her opening statement to the jury, so they would be aware of this case. And I took lots of notes. It looked like I got a little time. My family is chilling. Everybody is where they want to be. So I got some time to kind of, go over some of what was said. So I did take notes at the 5 hours and 28-minute mark. Rodelius Ryan, 15 years old, 2019, February, used a female acquaintance to lure someone to the home, to lure her Marie home. The female gets out. YSL members then came out with guns and unalive that 15-year-old. The creator, which they're calling Jeffrey, the YSL, left Fulton County. 12 hours later, a 19-year-old was unalive. Rodelius Ryan, names come up a lot, makes the news. He said he bet that YSL makes the news. He was agreeing to participate in the YSL. There was a survivor whose life was forever changed by the act of the YSL organization. They call themselves Slime. Significant to doing people dirty, promoting the game. Another member, a co-conspirator, somebody by the name of Damone, Blaylock, Slime, Oversluts, Heart. As Slime supposed to have a meaning to it. The emojis, they took over Cleveland Avenue, that community of Cleveland Avenue. Ryan on February 25th, 2019, they had something going on with Cash Money, said FYFN, the Arrival Street Gang. I took so many notes, you guys, that this right here is just a whole nother commentary breakdown within itself. And I don't want to blend that with this Ex-Parte, but I just want y'all to know that I am literally researching everything, crossing T's, dotting I's, and getting all of the information gathered up to have clarity before I came in here today. So shout out to the people who are watching us, because they watching people who are talking about this case. So I appreciate you guys for sending information to me. I want to get back in the comment section because I see some of y'all comments. Let me see. So Ashley says he can be prosecuted federally. The statute of limitations are not 5 years. Federal prosecution says the prosecution is wrong. So Thunderdrop says, what do you think about y'all President Trump? That's a whole nother commentary. He's not my president either. Let me see. Hilton says, told him that the statute is 5 years. They did tell him the statute was 5 years, which expired in 2020 as well as 2019. So then he can be prosecuted by the feds. Watch LYK. He is a federal prosecutor. They should not be given legal advice. This is a Brady violation. Now, I will agree with you because he's not their client. And then I did hear them say along the lines that they should not even be doing some of that stuff that they did do. So that's some gaps and there are some loopholes. Those are grounds that can potentially be held against the prosecuting team that can throw a lot of this stuff out. I mean, it's a possibility. They do, like I said, Brian Steele is a hell of an attorney. I'm no lawyer. I have lawyer undergrad background, I guess, or unlicensed lawyer. I'm not a bar associated member, but I'm kind of like just an unofficial lawyer is what I say I am. Okay, and the knowledge that I know and what I have, I'm able to share why I'm able to share what I'm able to share with you, along with my co-host, because she also has legal background herself, but she has really legal background. I got a degree and I was pursuing it, but I didn't get that far. So anyway, it's just this case is really messed up. Woody messed up big time because he went down there and he did something that he now later regrets, and he just wants to right his wrong. He don't want to send all these people to jail. He don't want that conscience on his mind. He want to clear his mind. He want to be able to continue to live outside and go places and live his best life and just turn up and just take care of his children, because he seems like he's a hell of a father. He had a great mom. She was very much involved in his life, his education, and she was leading him down the right path. And I don't know what caused his mom to lose her life. And again, my condolences to his mama, but that turned a leaf for him that he went into a different direction from where she was pointing him into. And then in the conclusion, we're here today. So, it's all about the choices that we make. We have to make better choices for ourselves. We have to start educating one another. We have to start, putting, each one teach one, each one reach one. We got to start looking out for our peoples, because if we don't educate us, we don't expect them to do this for us. This judicial system is not fair, never has been. It don't play fair, and it's so unfortunate. Admitting to I did these unlivings or Brady violations. This is how the Alec Baldwin case was tossed out. That's true. And like I even said with my moderator earlier, I was like, it's the new discovered evidence that, to hear all this information for the first time, it was giving me, I need to withdraw myself. So I see the mention a lot of rappers in this trial, and then they using a lot of the lyrics against them as well. And the reason they're using the lyrics, because I got a chance to hear some, is because the same way that the people who was unalive, they put it in their songs. So they're basically acknowledging that they had some level of something to do with it by saying, we shot up the Tahoe, and then you got Thomas with a Tahoe. So they kind of like was telling on themselves, and a lot of these rappers do that. They put this stuff in their music for motivation and to make it. It's just it's self-incriminating, and a lot of this is self-incriminating, and they all did this to themselves. So, but again, he's trying to turn a new leaf. It's just, y'all leave y'all thoughts in the comment section. What you want to say? Because I'm about to get out of here. You want to?
Okay.
You want to add your conclusion?
Yeah. I hope it's a learning lesson from reading these actual documents, these legal documents. There's no way that he can get out of it now, because to me, this is my opinion. Mm-hmm. Because whatever he has mentioned, mm-hmm. whatever evidence he provided, mm-hmm. it must have been so damaging that they're going to be able to use it once it looked like they looked into it, mm-hmm. and it was factual. Mm-hmm. So, when you give us information, mm-hmm. and you start working with the laws, I don't care if it's federal or state, mm-hmm. it doesn't really work out well for you. Don't let these movies fool you. It doesn't.
That's true. And then it was even in the opening statement, she even spoke about, that, YSL Young Thug, he was blessed to have this opportunity to, be in the limelight, make music, have his music, heard and produced, and then to create this enterprise that they were literally, in her words, not mine, they had Fulton County shook up, they had Cleveland Avenue shook up, lots of criminal crimes, and people was getting robbed, people was being laid down. I mean, so much stuff was happening, and they wasn't per se doing it, but they had people under them who wanted to be a part of them that was doing this stuff, and those people are testifying as well, and maybe they might have a change of heart too. So again, it's just, you just gotta, I mean, all money ain't good money, you guys, and you just gotta just be a law-abiding citizen. Go get you a job. You should not have to take nothing from nobody, and it's just it's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is go work for what you want. You ain't gotta take something from somebody else. I never had to rob Paul to pay Peter. I never had to dim nobody's light to shine. My light gonna shine because of God in me, and if it shines, it's shining. If it don't, I'm not gonna go dim somebody's and try to take their shine. What was for Young Thug was for him, and what's for you is for you, and what's for us is for us. God is not going to give your blessing to somebody else. Everybody get a chance to shine in life when you do the right thing to shine. But when you trying to get a quick come up and you trying to take something from somebody, this is the worst thing you could do. And all the criminal activities, and even the dude that I spoke about, Ryan, who is also a part of this case, I was unaware, but listening to the opening statements again, he actually was being arrested by an officer officer took his gun off his holster, shot that man 7 times. Now that officer is dealing with PTSD and some other stuff, and that's a whole nother case, but he is claiming YSL, and they were doing a lot of this stuff using the YSL name, and wanting to be down, and they got a lot of evidence to put them all together at each other's around each other's house. They have so much evidence that a lot of the stuff they have could not be used, but they using some of the stuff just to show you what they were doing and how they was doing it. And it's just so much. Like I said, I would have to break down the opening statement with you guys from where I started at till the end of it, and that won't be a long one to do because I came in towards the end. Thankfully, like I said, to the people who sending me information, and shout out to y'all know who y'all are. And again, if anybody is new to my channel, let me just say welcome. If you return, and welcome back. If you're not subscribed, please hit that subscribers button and turn that post bell notification on and select all so you don't miss me when I come back and bring you guys yet another one. But that is my time, and I did spend my Sunday with y'all, so I got to leave y'all with some positivity. But you are done, co-host, because I need to hang you up so I can get to this last part of my commentary.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'll talk to you soon. Thank you so much again. Appreciate you, Queen. You can see you in the chat.
You're welcome.
Okay, God bless. Bye-bye. All right, so yeah, I'm gonna leave you guys with something positive. If you guys, didn't catch it, you get to hear it now. God bless each and every one of y'all. I'm praying for you guys. I'm praying for Woody. I'm praying for his, that nothing happens to him due to the fact that honestly, he just wanted to he just wanted to fix it. He just wanted to right his wrong. He really did not want to testify, and they forced that upon him. And I do feel bad for him for that. But it's unfortunate that this is the way it is. So with that being said, let me just leave y'all with something positive, and I hope you guys appreciate this. God bless you guys. I spent my Sunday with y'all, so now y'all got to spend 3 minutes with me and listen to the good word of God.
No, we covered in the blood because I'm praying, okay?
I'm praying
and we were seeking the Lord, and God just dropped in our spirit the word higher. And I have to tell you, when God first gave me that word, I felt a little challenged because the Potter's house has already done so many incredible things. And I was thinking to myself, God, I don't even know if it's possible for the Potter's house to do anything more than it's already done. And I felt God convicts me in a major way. And I felt like God was trying to convict me into understanding that if I limit what God can do to what has already been done, that I am going to miss God altogether. Literally, I heard God asking me, do you think that everything I want to do in the earth and everything I want to do in the Potter's house, I've already done? Or are you crazy enough to believe that what God has done in 28 years is just the foundation for what he wants to do in the next 28 years? God told me, don't limit my glory to what you can see, but be crazy enough to believe that there's still more that I need to do. And then when I started looking online and I started seeing souls lost and I started seeing people in need of an answer, God says, wherever you see a broken soul, wherever you see someone in need of a hand to lift them up, know that the Potter's house still has work to do. Wherever you see brokenness, wherever you see addiction, wherever you see divorce, wherever you see abuse, know that the Potter's house still has work to do. Know that wherever you see someone who needs a helping hand, that the Potter's house still has work to do. And you can sit back and rest on what has already been done, or you can be crazy enough to say, God, I want to be a part of what you want to do right now in this city, in this globe, in these families, in this generation, with the music, with the movies, with the books. God, if you want to do something in the earth and it's going to have fresh oil and fresh wind and fresh fire, God, do it through the Potter's house. I don't know about you, but I don't care what the statistics say. I don't care who's walking away. I'm going to stand in the place where God has sent me, and I am going to do the work of the Lord. So higher. Higher, 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 higher. If you think this is the mountain peak, this is not the church for you. But we need a few crazy
builders who are crazy enough to say higher, 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 higher. Thank you for getting us this far. Now help us to keep moving things forward. Ooh, you gotta love Sarah. Gotta love Sarah for this. I felt God tell me, don't rest when you could be working. Don't rest on someone else's faith. Someone else's faith built this church. Someone else's obedience built this church. And we don't get to just put it in cruise control and say, God, they already did the heavy lifting, because he still has work he wants to do in the earth. And so it's time for some of us to roll up our sleeves and say, if I still got air in my lungs, if I still got strength in my arms, if I still got wisdom in my mind, I'm going to establish the kingdom with what God has given me to work with. This is a message for Woody. And that vision and that conviction and anybody else that challenged me to see what God is doing in this church on a totally different level. And I want you to consider that. I was reading Hebrews 10 and 39. And this is not an unfamiliar scripture, but I asked him to pull it for us anyway. And I feel like it is so timely. Because when I was looking at Hebrews 10 and 39, you can put it on the screen for me. It says, but we do not belong to those who shrink back and are destroyed, but to those who have faith and are saved. Oh, I feel like preaching already. But before we take the tithes and offering, I just want to remind somebody that it doesn't matter what you see happening in the news. We have a responsibility to pray. We have a responsibility to cover. But if we allow what's happening in the world to make us shrink back, then we are not who we have declared ourselves to be, because we do not belong to those who shrink back and are destroyed because of what is happening in the world. I belong to a Savior who keeps pushing in the midst of destruction. I belong to a Savior who gives me wisdom and insight and knowledge and power for the saving of souls. Save your souls. This is not a time to shrink back. This is a time to move forward. This is not a time to shrink back and prepare for destruction. This is a time to build with faith, to build with intentionality, for us to get serious about souls, for us to get serious about worship not just being a song, but a lifestyle. And it is in that spirit of worship that I want you to prepare your tithes and offering. Keep the spirit high, because this worship is going towards my harvest. I need you to keep the spirit high in this room, because I'm sowing into higher. I want you to consider an area where you've seen people falling short, an area where you see people who can need a lifting hand. And maybe their families aren't doing it, maybe the government isn't doing it, but you see that somebody needs help coming up higher. Maybe you're the person who needs a little help coming up higher. I could talk about the tithe. That's very easy. That's 10% of our increase. That's our way of saying, God, you gave me the job. God, I don't care who signs the check. I know that there are people more qualified. God, maybe there's been layoffs. The tithe is easy. I'm in relationship with God. God, I asked you for this opportunity. I asked you for this job. My tithe is my reasonable service. It's me saying, I acknowledge you in all of my ways. Oh, I want you to act different. God wants you to believe different. Oh, so strategic is our God that he doesn't just allow Jesus to enter the earth.
He sends a forerunner who preaches repentance, which quite literally means to change your mind. Because he recognizes that he's got a position of people to believe differently. So that when Jesus comes, he doesn't have to work on getting you to believe different and to act different. So concerned with our belief as God that John 3:16 tells us, for God so loved the world. He gave his only begotten Son. That he gave his only begotten Son.
That whosoever believes.
That whosoever believes.
Hallelujah. It's a message. It's a message.
He recognizes that if they are going to be effective in being connected to him, that they're going to have to be willing to confront their beliefs. What you believe plays a huge role in your actions. I get a lot of communication from people who are trying to maybe leave toxic relationships. And they're like, how do I leave? When do I leave? Tell me what to do.
And that's my message for you guys. God bless each and every one of us according to the will of God. You guys have a great Sunday. Pray for somebody, encourage somebody, and I'll see you guys on the next one. That is my time. If you're new to this platform, you haven't subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Turn that post bell notification on and select all. And again, we are praying for Woody because he definitely is in need of prayer. So that's my time. See y'all on the next one. Piecez.